In a world where secrets and lies dominate, James Richardson, a secretive government spy, uncovers his wife Cathy's affair with the billionaire Kenneth Turner. What begins as suspicion grows into a web of betrayal as James installs hidden cameras, revealing Cathy's deceit. His heart sinks further when he discovers her romantic dinners and secret meetings during his own covert missions. As James battles his inner turmoil, he's forced to choose between his dangerous career and confronting the woman he once loved. Tensions rise as he begins to doubt his own choices, realizing that the line between love and hate is razor thin. Will revenge consume him, or will he find a way out of this emotional labyrinth? I'm often in the background, doing things that most people wouldn't believe. Some of my actions stay with me, while others give me a sense of pride. I've done good things and bad things, even some that seem really wrong. I know it might seem like I'm a bad person, but I do what I can to keep my country safe. I want to protect our soldiers and our interests. I work with supportive governments and help remove those who oppose us, but I can't talk about it. I don't get any thanks or recognition for my work. That's just how it is. I have saved many lives by stopping threats, but no one will ever know. I can't tell them I'm a spy. Being isolated can be really hard. My loneliness is affecting my life now, and my wife doesn't really know who I am. I sense that she might leave me. It hurts to think she could be with someone else. He's rich, and that makes it worse. It's like she found someone who has more than I do. I remember the moment I saw her smiling at him. I know that feeling all too well. I can see everything clearly, and it hurts. This man is taller and good-looking, but it's his wealth that makes him stand out. Everyone knows Kenneth Turner because he is a billionaire. He shows off his money in every way he can, always with different women by his side. One of them is Cathy, my wife. I'm James Richardson, and I'm 29 years old. I grew up in a small town in Tennessee. People used to call me Jimmy Rich, even though I didn't have any money. Cathy, who is 31, and I have been married for 5 years, at least for now. She thinks I work a regular job, processing files for the government and making a decent salary. It's a good cover, but it's far from what upper-middle-class people earn near Washington, D.C. Cathy is a lawyer at a big firm, close to making partner. She earned almost $300,000 last year, including bonuses. She is very smart, driven, and attractive, and I can tell she's looking for someone who can give her more. Cathy has a lovely face and long, dark hair. Her eyes are soft and expressive, and she has a beautiful smile with dimples. She is about 5 feet 6 inches tall and wears heels, making her a bit taller than me. She weighs 119 pounds and has a shape that she likes to show off in her business clothes, often wearing dresses or skirts that are just above the knees. Lately, her outfits have been getting bolder. She wore a simple black thong that couldn't be seen from behind her work clothes. Lately, she had started dressing in a way that was very attractive, but not for me. I had seen her looking good, but she wasn't showing it off for me. I suspected it was for someone else. I couldn't really blame her, and it didn't seem right to confront her. My life with her felt like one big illusion, filled with secrets and lies. Now, I found myself asking a tough question. How could I accuse her of being unfaithful when I was not honest with her? I knew that made me a hypocrite. Things were catching up to me, and I felt the weight of it. She had no idea who I truly was, what I could do, or how strong I had become. I had to keep playing my role. Tonight, I would keep up the act while playing softball with my coworkers from a big company. I'd been doing this for a long time, and usually I was just an average center fielder. But tonight was different. Cathy was in the stands watching me. She was texting and looked pretty bored. It was the 7th inning, and my team was 2 runs behind. I watched my beautiful but spoiled wife, wishing she cared more about the game and not about someone else. With 1 out and the bases full, I wanted the game to end quickly. Then, a high fly ball came my way. I backed up to the outfield fence, jumped, and caught it. I took a step and threw the ball as hard as I could. It flew straight and fast, reaching the catcher just in time to tag the runner out at home. Everyone on my team was shocked. "Where did that throw come from?" my left fielder asked as we jogged back in. "I don't know. It just happened," I replied, feeling a bit shy but happy. "It was a big league throw," he said quietly. He knew what he was talking about since he had played college baseball and almost went pro until he hurt his ankle in a motorcycle accident. Most of the people in this league had played sports in high school or college before working in their regular jobs. But we still enjoyed these games once a week, keeping the fun going. Playing ball was good for my cover, but it reminded me why what I was doing was important. It helped millions of people live their lives, enjoying small things like this, bowling, golf, or watching football. But Cathy didn't seem to notice my excitement. It's our last chance to bat, and I'm finally up with 2 outs and 2 teammates on base. This is slow-pitch softball, and I'm still upset. I decide to just hit the ball like I can and not worry about it. Maybe I'm a bit crazy. My boss, Ron Feldman, is also coaching, and he's watching me closely. He's my pretend boss at the GSA, but he also works with the NSA, so I take a swing and hit the ball hard. It goes really far, probably about 500 feet. No one on this field has ever hit a softball that far. I jog home, and that's a winning home run, but I'm not smiling. Cathy still doesn't notice me. Some of my teammates want to congratulate me, but they're mostly just surprised by that hit. Usually, we would all go to the local bar for drinks after the game, whether we win or lose. Cathy and I used to like that, but she hasn't come to my games or work events for the last 2 years, so neither of us wants to go tonight. I make some excuses and we head home. She's really quiet in the car, and I know what's coming. I start before we even get back to our nice condo. We need to talk. I say it's important. She looks at me strangely. I'm not happy anymore. I think I need some space. I'm planning to move out. She just stares at me with no emotion. She looks perfectly calm, like a good poker player. I realize she probably thinks she's really good at keeping her feelings hidden, but she has no idea how I've learned to hide mine. We both know she earns a lot more money than I do, and I can't afford this place alone, so I already found an apartment. I can see her starting to worry a little because she didn't see this coming. She thought I was just going to be shocked tonight. Well, in some ways I was. The apartment I'm moving into is one I've used before, and it's available now. Yes, I'm playing a game, but that's all I can do. Since I started at Notre Dame, I was taught to adapt and think quickly, and that's what I'm doing right now. Cathy knows she should say something, but she's confused because she's getting what she wants without arguing, and she doesn't want to ruin that. Well, if that's what you really want, she says. I stare at her firmly. She finally looks down, a little embarrassed. I can tell what she's thinking. She can't believe she's not the one in control here. She's always been the top dog in our relationship. She's a lawyer with a rich client and boyfriend, while I feel like just an ordinary person. She makes a lot of money and has a bright future, while I don't. My future looks like it will be filled with the same boring routine. But maybe she remembers how strong I am when she interacts with me. Maybe someone mentioned how tough I was today and how physical it felt. Maybe she lost respect for me a long time ago because of money and status. But perhaps she feels a bit worried, even scared, that I am more physically strong than she is, and even more than her new boyfriend. But surely, that can't be it. She thinks hard. I can see it on her face as she straightens up and looks at me. Yes, that's what I want. I continue. Why don't you just leave for a few hours or the whole night, like you have done often lately? I'll gather my things and be out of your way. She turns away, nods, and walks out. I knew this wouldn't last from the very beginning, and still, I went for it. Even worse, I started feeling attached to her after all. I can't believe it. Now let's think about Cathy. I left our apartment for the last time without saying goodbye to Jim. It's strange that I just thought of him as Jim now instead of Little Jimmy, which is what I had called him for the past year. Well, that went well, I told myself, but did it? I can't believe he keeps surprising me. Just when I think I know him well, he does something odd. Why did he do this? Why am I even thinking about it? I planned to ask him to leave tonight, but I was sure he didn't see this coming. Our life together was pretty much the same 2 or 3 times a week, just like for the last 3 years. As long as we weren't traveling for work, I always enjoyed being with Jim and never pretended otherwise. He was good enough for that, and while not the biggest, was certainly above average. He had a lot of little tricks that made things exciting for us. But I wanted more from life than just good moments. I had always wanted more. Nothing Jim could do in our private time could match the thrill of a new partner who was wealthy, powerful, and someone everyone admired. How could I possibly turn down a chance with a man like that? I called Kenneth as soon as I got into my car. He wanted me to be with him tonight, but I decided to skip it just this once to end things with Jim. I thought it would take a long time of him complaining and begging. I even considered one last moment of affection to help him feel better or remind him what he was losing, just to keep him hanging on a bit. After all, things didn't work out with Mr. Wonderful like I hoped. Hey, I'm done with Jim. I'm free now, and I'm yours for every other night. When can I see you? I said. Hey, Cathy, why don't you come over to my place? I have an important dinner meeting with Senator Rayburn tonight, and I'm almost there already. I'll be home later, and I'll try not to be too late. Okay, I can't wait to see you. I'll be ready for whatever you want to do later. I hoped I sounded as exciting and eager as I felt. He was at some fancy dinner with rich and famous people, maybe an important state event. It felt like such a glamorous life, so different from my time with Jim. Lately, I had been by Jim's side at many of these types of events. Our own little relationship started soon after I met Kenneth. I was a lawyer helping one of my firm's partners with some work related to him. A lot of our firm's money came from lobbying. Once Kenneth met me, he definitely tried to get closer to me. I kept it cool, but I did dress more stylishly. I made sure Kenneth saw a little more of me, especially when climbing out of his car. He quickly learned the benefits of holding the door for me. I often flashed a polite smile, but I also believed that doing a good job for him meant I would spend more time with him, which was also helpful for my own career. Luckily, I had some connections with key lawmakers we needed to help Kenneth's business. The main goal was to improve the relationship between the USA and Iran, which the current president also wanted. However, the president and the State Department could only do so much. Congress needed to act as well. In my talks with Senator Sandberg, we came up with a new plan to bypass Congress, and it worked great. Not only was the president happy, but so was Kenneth and all the partners at my law firm. Kenneth's businesses were set to gain a lot from the money being freed up in the negotiations with Iran. I also received a nice bonus from Kenneth. He gave me a beautiful necklace made of diamonds, emeralds, and platinum. It was worth about $100,000. He presented it in his limo while we drove to his big townhouse in Georgetown for a private dinner to celebrate. I thanked him excitedly, as any lady would. He seemed very happy with my reaction, which impressed me. I moved closer to him in the back seat but kept my dress slightly raised, just in case he wanted to glance. He did look. The dinner was wonderful. The chef and servers soon left us alone as we headed to his master bedroom. That night was full of excitement and also tiring. He had plenty of uplifting drinks and medicine that we both used wisely. He really knew how to create a good time. My partner, Jimmy, never seemed to notice anything. I stayed over at his place that night and the next 3 nights too because he was away for a 2-week business class that he attended every year. After that, we spent a lot of time together, which surprised me. Jimmy never mentioned my longer absences from home, even during nights and weekends. He showed no signs of worry about it, until tonight. Jim sighed, recalling how he got to this point in his life as he packed up to move out of his house. I think I had a typical childhood. Both my parents were together. Dad struggled with drinking but worked hard every day. Mom stayed at home and made it a warm place for us. We didn't have much money, but we never went hungry. I played a lot with kids in our neighborhood, enjoying baseball in the summer, tackle football in the fall and winter, and basketball throughout the year. We played on the streets, just kids having fun. I also rode my bike, explored the woods, built dams in creeks, and swam in lakes. I climbed trees, swung on ropes, and did chores around our home and yard. I wasn't very big, measuring 5 feet 8 inches and weighing 160 pounds by the time I turned 18. Yet I grew up strong and quick, actually really strong. I didn't look it, as I didn't have bulging muscles, but my arms and legs were thick and tough. I had a 34-inch waist. I didn't have those perfect abs, just a solid and firm midsection. Maybe it was something in the water because 3 of my friends from nearby went on to be pros in major sports, 1 in baseball, 1 in football, and 1 in basketball. I was just as good as them while growing up. In high school, I wrestled, which was my only organized sport. I had an average record and didn't stand out much. My coach often wondered why I didn't do better, even as we practiced together and sometimes wrestled in different weight classes. During my second year of high school, I had to face our senior heavyweight wrestler, who was also the champion of our section. I was 135 pounds while he weighed 210. In an incredible moment, I managed to pin him in under 20 seconds. I quickly moved behind him, lifted him up, and threw him over my shoulder so that both his shoulders hit the mat. Afterward, I brushed it off as just a lucky moment, and he laughed it off too. But he never asked for a rematch. The reality was that I was just as strong as he was, and I was also faster and more athletic. However, I didn't want to be in the spotlight. So I tried to manage my own wrestling career carefully, making sure not to hurt my opponents and intentionally losing a few close matches every year. It often felt like bad luck played a role. I also trained in judo and karate during high school, and by my senior year, I began mixed martial arts training at a gym in Memphis. Once I got my driver's license and a beat-up old truck for the 35-mile trip, the coach at the gym really encouraged me to pursue a professional career in sports. After seeing me spar a couple of times, he thought I had potential. But I wasn't interested. Maybe it was my Catholic upbringing. It felt like too much pressure. I didn't want to use my strength just for my own fame. I wanted to help others and be part of something bigger, but I wasn't sure what that meant yet. I considered joining the military, which was my plan for the future. But first, I wanted to get an education. I graduated in the top 10% of my high school class, excelling mainly in languages. I received all A's in English, Latin, Spanish, and French. I also had a knack for speaking, not just for athletics. This helped me earn a partial scholarship to Notre Dame, along with some support from my local church and a priest there. The idea of joining the priesthood crossed my mind, as it felt like a calling to serve something greater than myself. Private martial arts lessons were out of reach financially, but there was a club at the college where I could train with other students. I also took fencing as a physical education class and walked on to the Notre Dame fencing team. After getting the basics down, I switched from foil to saber. Our saber coach was from Hungary, a country known for producing top saber champions for many years. I learned a lot quickly. I already had some experience with kendo and other martial arts, but the European style was different and quite effective. Academically, I did well, especially in languages. I took an Arabic course in my second semester and found it very interesting. There were a few students of Arabic descent in my class, including one very charming girl. I kept the idea of joining the priesthood in mind while wondering if celibacy was truly for me. We quickly became part of a small study group that met nearly every night. I felt a connection with one person in the group, but maybe I was just dreaming about it. This was when I first got noticed. One of my Jesuit professors, who had links to Georgetown University and a larger network of Jesuits, approached me. They were always looking for new people for our national security agencies. This all started back when Bill Donovan was in charge of the OSS, which was the start of the CIA, and it continues today. I'm not sure if Father Warren knew I practiced martial arts, but he definitely knew about my college fencing and my skills in Arabic. Being able to speak Arabic and being a fast learner made me valuable. My smaller size also helped because it made it easier to blend in when working undercover in many countries, from North Africa to the Middle East and even in India, China, Korea, and Japan. He was very convincing. He shared exciting stories about previous recruits and their successes. Of course, the failures were not discussed much and often became a big topic in the news, while the many wins were kept secret for good reasons, like protecting the people involved. He also gave me a captivating book about Ignatius of Loyola, one of the founders of the Jesuits. Ignatius was a warrior and a skilled swordsman who had been in many fights. After being wounded, he changed his life and turned away from violence to truly follow the teachings of Jesus. So I decided to join. I wasn't quite sure what I was getting into, but I believed it was a local intelligence group reporting to the NSA. Yes, the NSA is known for just electronic spying and collecting data. But from that moment, I didn't have to worry about paying for books, classes, or where to live. I even had enough money to live well. I also began to receive training in some unique skills not usually taught in college. This included learning how to connect with people, which had nothing to do with future plans involving celibacy or the priesthood. I started unofficially learning Cantonese and about Chinese culture while changing my major to Arabic and Middle Eastern studies. My first assignment was Fatima, a girl from my Arabic class. I was meant to get close to her and try to influence her in some way. Of course, building connections is one way to do this, but there were many other ways too. I learned a lot about psychology and how people behave. This included simple ideas and more complex ones, like how power and social ranking work, both real and imagined. Sometimes what people believe can be strong enough, even if it's not based on reality. For example, beliefs can change quickly. People might feel shocked, like a husband who discovers his wife is being unfaithful, or someone who loses all their savings in a bad investment. These sudden changes can shake up someone's whole view of the world. It's common for people to adjust their views when needed. I received a detailed background on Fatima and her family. Her family was upper middle class and lived in Saudi Arabia. There was no sign that anyone in her family had extreme views, but they were all at least practicing Muslims. My job was to explore this and build a strong friendship with her. I knew that if things went further, I wanted to handle it well. It was a real challenge for a college freshman like me. I chose to take my time and focus on being friends first, hoping she might feel the same way in the future. I wished she would be back in the fall, but I couldn't see her over the summer because I was going to basic training in Virginia. During training, I learned self-defense skills. After just one class, I ended up helping to teach others. I spent most of my time sparring with other instructors, many of whom were experienced veterans. They were impressed with my skills. Usually, we hear that tough instructors can be hard on students, but these men were different. They mainly wanted to share what worked for them based on their experiences. In real-life situations, it was about quick, effective techniques. They didn't focus on fair battles or rules. Real fights are quick, often ending badly for someone. Any serious blow to the head can lead to serious harm, like concussions or even death. Even techniques that may seem harmless, like certain holds, can have dangerous outcomes. It's important to be aware of the risks involved. Even Olympic fencing matches can sometimes end in tragedy. All it takes is for a sword to break during a match, and that sharp piece can easily go through the thick jackets that competitors wear, which is why people are starting to use Kevlar jackets more often. I had told my family and a few friends from college at Fatima that I got a paid internship at a charity organization near Washington. I hoped my studies on Middle Eastern culture would help me find a real job after I graduated. That sounded like a good plan, and I had gained enough knowledge along the way. The summer went by quickly while I was in basic training. I learned a lot, especially in the hands-on classes. By the end of summer, I felt more experienced in the ways of relationships. It was a different experience compared to what I'd heard or seen before. There are important lessons to remember. The main idea is to avoid trying to recreate movie-style romance at first. Sometimes you might meet someone with a very different personality. Be cautious and gently explore what they like. Also, avoid making things too intense in any way. It's straightforward if you think about it. Great connections often start and end in the mind, so it's important to understand how to connect with someone mentally. There were about 20 of us new recruits. We were all unique in our ways. I was short and had a plain look, which helped me fit in anywhere, and I was good at learning languages. The more attractive and confident people seemed to stand out as potential leaders. They didn't pay much attention to me until that first hand-to-hand combat class, where I unexpectedly impressed the instructor by throwing him across the room. Suddenly, people noticed me more. Maybe it was that thrill of danger. I didn't want to rely on that lifestyle. Some of my classmates really enjoyed it, though. After a few weeks, we practiced different techniques and acted out various scenarios together. I worked with a couple of women and even a man once, who respected my boundaries. Maybe someday I might have to take that step, but only if it became a matter of life or death. I would deal with that if it came up. I thought about my time at Fatima. It helped me train in a way. We learned about the intense gaze, which is that look of deep interest and attraction that is often confused for love. It involves looking into someone's eyes closely, which creates a natural connection that most people feel when they meet someone special. When you look at someone you care about, their eyes seem bigger and more inviting. It's about being close to someone and noticing how their eyes react. Their pupils can widen and it feels almost magical. It's tough to pretend, but thinking about someone you care about can help you connect with the person right in front of you. You try to understand her thoughts and feelings. A few of us actually formed connections over the last month. For me, it was a girl named Jennifer, and I believe we were only focused on each other for the last 3 weeks. It wasn't love, but we definitely grew closer. I think the people in charge allowed this because we would need to learn how to let go when our training finished. We only knew each other's first names, and were told to keep our personal lives private since one of the students might actually be an instructor trying to find out everything about us. I'm not sure if that was true. I never heard anything more about it before or after. I finally returned to Notre Dame a week before my second year. Remembering my time with Jennifer was pleasant, and I tried to forget my sadness by drinking a bit in my new apartment. My phone rang at 7 a.m. the next day, waking me up. I had a terrible headache. I figured it might be Cathy asking me to come home, but that didn't seem likely. It was my boss, Ron. "I need you to come in by 9. Is that okay for you?" I croaked a reply. "Sure, I can manage that, but I'm not feeling great. It's not urgent, but it is important. Just be here. Bye." That meant there wasn't an urgent operation happening. It could just be some planning or important information that needed to be sorted out. I sighed and pulled myself up to shower, alternating hot and cold water for about 15 minutes, which helped wake me up. After some scrambled eggs, bacon, orange juice, milk, and a lot of coffee, plus 3 aspirin, I felt semi-normal by the time I got to the office at 8:55. Ron was already at his desk, holding his usual large coffee cup. He looked like the typical government worker, tall, thin, with thinning hair and glasses. I sat down and he grinned, saying, "You look terrible." I just shrugged. "What was all the fuss at the game last night?" He waved his hand. "Never mind that. We know you moved out into one of our apartments. It's fine. You don't need our permission, but now we have some concerns and it's time to decide." "We?" "Yes," he replied. "Someone's coming over to talk to you soon. I'm your supervisor, as you know, but that's just a title. I don't really know much about what you do or who you are. I take care of the paperwork and your travel plans and other tasks like that." I was a bit surprised. "Really? I thought you knew what was going on. I know enough to keep quiet and enjoy my decent government paycheck. Sometimes I wish I knew more and had more power, but then again, with more power comes more problems. So, never mind. I'm mostly here to keep an eye on you. I'll be leaving when your real manager arrives to talk with you today. You haven't met him yet, and even after today, you won't know his real name. I don't think you're in trouble, but I can sense there are some worries about your personal life. I hope everything turns out okay for you." After that, we both sat quietly for about 10 minutes. Then an older man came in and nodded at Ron before telling me to follow him. He had a mustache and spoke with a nice, easygoing accent. He wore casual clothes and really looked the part of a cowboy. He was a bit taller than me and had a bit of extra weight, but he wasn't too heavy. We walked down to the parking garage and got into his shiny Chevy Tahoe. I thought it might have some special upgrades. It was really quiet inside and felt very sturdy, maybe even reinforced. "Just call me Rob James. I'm glad to finally meet you. This might be the first and last time we talk, and that mostly depends on you now." I didn't know what to say. My work life could be changing, along with my marriage. "You know a lot of languages, yet you don't speak much," Rob noted, smiling at me. "Better to be seen as foolish than to speak and prove it." I smiled back, even though it gave me a bit of a headache. "Good enough. I might be the fool here, but I'm going to share some important secrets with you, even if we won't meet again after this. You've earned the truth, I think. The truth is, you've been a surprising success in your career. You were one of the youngest people ever recruited into any intelligence service in the USA. Many believed you wouldn't make it through basic training. 11 of your classmates failed that year, especially the ones who seemed promising but couldn't keep things under wraps in their personal lives, and that self-control was crucial from the start. It's about character and a certain wisdom that comes from knowing how to keep things private, feeling a kind of humility or maybe a bit of paranoia which leads to success. You showed that character more than most, and you did it all at just 19 years old. Well done. And also your words, skills, and hard work to improve those skills. Your physical strength was a nice surprise, but it's not the main thing we need. We have many younger men who help us with physical tasks. Most of them have shown their worth through regular military careers. We don't need you for those kinds of jobs. Still, your surprising talent in martial arts could be very useful in tough situations where we need to defend ourselves or escape. You've already done this in different situations. You've saved us from trouble, especially some very important people. They could have been in serious danger or worse by now. However, the truth is you're still young at 29. We've been slowly preparing you for potentially more rewarding roles. I and a few others have been keeping an eye on you, both at work and in your personal life, and it feels like we are at a turning point now. It's time to decide. Stay or go. You've probably wondered why you're living such a secret life right now. You can't even tell your wife what you really do. Let me explain. You are basically acting as a watchful agent, even here in the USA. I officially work for the NSA, but I'm also part of a small group of people who feel limited and frustrated by political and bureaucratic problems. We can't do our jobs effectively. And what is our job? Simply to protect the people of this great country from all kinds of threats? You might be feeling scared right now, thinking I'm crazy or part of a plan to harm the United States government. I hope that's what you're thinking. If not, I might have misjudged you. But please hear me out. I've been thinking about movies like Dr. Strangelove and 7 Days in May, and even about certain groups that are against the government. But I decided to listen. If things got really bad, I knew I could defend myself easily. I could make my move quickly, and I thought he realized that too. We don't really exist as part of the NSA, CIA, or FBI, but we've learned how to work alongside them. It's more about working together on the same level, not at the higher management positions. We also have some wealthy supporters in private businesses. Some people at Halliburton and Blackwater and similar companies help us with funding for our secret operations, but sometimes we need extra money. We always have emergency funds available. Everything we do is voluntary. You and every agent we have join us by choice. Anyone can choose to leave at any time. Our main goal is to support and protect the United States. We believe in the values of freedom and fairness in our country. We could pay you and everyone else much more money, but we don't. We want people to be here for the right reasons, not for money. Money can give power, but power can lead people to do bad things. These are important lessons you have learned. Many jobs involve some level of power and moral choices. For example, sometimes you may have to hide things from your own spouse, but you do it for a bigger purpose, not just for your own comfort or safety. We all have to face our own moral challenges and do our best to be good, using guidelines like those from Augustine on just warfare. Not all morals are just personal opinions. There are some things that are clearly worse or more harmful than others. We try to recognize this in our daily lives. Strength doesn't determine what is right, but it can help support what is right, as Abraham Lincoln noted during tough times. I don't hope God is on my side. I hope I am on God's side. We pray to be on the right side of morality. We support and protect at least one country where personal freedom still exists, along with some essential human rights we believe are given to us. These include life, freedom, and the right to pursue happiness and enjoy the rewards of our hard work. We will keep an eye on and act against any activities that might harm the USA. This is happening in many ways, especially through foreign influences and groups that might threaten us. In the end, we might not succeed. If a controlling government takes over, you and I, along with others, might be in serious danger. You've studied revolutions, right? Yes, it could be like that, or even worse. So you can leave now and focus on your own life if you want. We can help you find a well-paying job at a known conservative organization. You could start earning $300,000 a year, even including your spouse. We can also help you deal with someone like Kenneth Turner in a public way that could help you and your wife. I guarantee it. Think of this as what you have earned, plus some extra to keep everything quiet. There was silence for a moment while I took this in. I wasn't really shocked. You can learn a lot by observing and listening instead of always talking. Yes, agents need some level of privacy to protect themselves and their families. What I had to deal with was unusual. I even had someone who acted like me, almost like a shadow. Whenever I left the country for a week or more, this person would step in. He never got involved with my wife or anything like that. It just looked like I was coming and going when my wife and I were really away. She for work and I for some job overseas. Eventually, I wondered if there might be another way out. What if I wanted to stay? Then I'd have to face the fact that my marriage was really over for now, and maybe for good. That wasn't up for discussion. I shouldn't have married in the first place, especially not someone like her. We probably made a mistake letting it happen. Honestly, my training officer doubted I could handle it anyway. He was right, and deep down, I knew it. I didn't want to think about the good times we had together. It hurt too much. I had to deal with it. Okay, I'm ready to go through with this. I'll start the divorce process tomorrow. Are you sure about this? If you change your mind later, I can't promise it will be easier. As long as you're serious about this. If I find out that you haven't been honest with me about anything, I'll consider everything off the table, right? That sounds fair. This is basically an agreement we have to stick to. Trust is important among us. Now, on to business. First things first, don't file for divorce just yet with Cathy. Let things unfold a bit. Cathy and her new partner are actually important to us right now. He's involved in the current situation with Iran, and she and her law firm are as well. None of this seems to benefit the USA or any real values we believe in. Can you act like a sad husband who feels betrayed? I can help you get good counseling and coaching. If you have any doubts, I'm here for you. I'll play my part and act upset, while also trying to gather information from her. Could you get some pictures of her and the new man together in the news, maybe with some gossip articles? I don't want her thinking that I have hired a private investigator. Let me talk to my team and I'll get back to you. I think it's also time for you to move out of that GSA building to a more secure place, and I'll assign you a proper case manager for this and other things that are coming up. Let's make it look like you've been given a lower position. You'll earn less money officially, but you'll get a special card that lets you have whatever you want without seeing any bills or having to pay. I'm really happy and grateful that you chose to stay with us. We have put a lot of trust in you because we believe you can do great things. I hope this works out well for everyone, but sometimes I worry that we're only fixing a few small problems while there are still so many more. I can get a bit too deep in my thoughts at times. Where should I take you now? Back to your old office, I guess. Now let's look at what's happening with Cathy. Kenneth came home a little after midnight after meeting with Senator Rayburn, but he wasn't alone. He brought another woman with him. I had said I was ready for anything when he got home, but I was hoping we could grow closer, not just have a brief, casual encounter. It was clear that I didn't have much control in this situation. The only way I could push back was by not being close to him. If I did that, he would just focus all his energy on this other woman. She looked very young, not much older than 20, and she was also dressed stylishly. She seemed confident, too. She was likely very experienced and only a challenge for Kenneth's attention for tonight. But it showed me something important. Kenneth wouldn't be alone when it came to women if he didn't have me around. Right now, I didn't seem to matter much to him. He was special to me, but I knew he didn't feel the same way. I realized I would need to work on becoming special to him. I had to start tonight. It was just the beginning, not the end, as I had foolishly thought. I was moving on from my past with Jim, focusing on my own choices regarding my body and who I let into my life. I believed I could make a deeper connection with Kenneth tonight. I was confident I could show him how I truly felt, as that was my secret weapon. I was ready for anything, and Kenneth would have to keep up with me. However, there was a small part of me wondering if I should keep my options open and remember little Jimmy a bit longer. He might not be the strong man Kenneth is, but he could still give me comfort and love. Life was looking pretty good, I thought with confidence. I believed that Jimmy still really cared about me and that I could get my way with him whenever I wanted. But let's see how Jim was feeling. It had been 2 weeks since I moved out of the home I used to share with my wife, and things were getting interesting. I missed her a lot. She was beautiful, and we always had fun together. At least, I thought we did, but maybe not. I kept seeing more and more pictures of her with Kenneth in the news, which made it easier for me to question her about him. We were still talking, but I had to be careful. I was playing my part well and had some help. Having a team on my side really made things easier, especially since 3 of them were women who could give me their ideas and thoughts on how to deal with everything. I was settling into my new office at the Federal Highways Administration in a different location. I was still a GS-14, but my pay was cut to the lowest amount for that level because of the situation. My new boss, Elaine, was a woman I already knew from my training days. She had been one of my trainers back then. It turned out that she was really an undercover instructor during my training, and she did it well. I managed to avoid her tricks, but many of the other trainees didn't. I was surprised when I first saw my new boss. "Hello, Jim. I'm glad we can finally work together in person. she said with a playful smile that I always found charming. I smiled back, thinking this was just a nice thought, but I had work to do. It was enjoyable, but still work. Now we needed to keep it professional. "I understand," I replied. But then she stopped smiling and said, "I know you're going through a tough time with Cathy, and I'm sorry. I feel for you. I just wanted to say that before I bring in your new partner. We're all adults here. And you've been pretty much a grown-up since you were 19. You know what kind of life you've been living. It's not fair, but it is what it is. We'll try to help you, and let's try to make something good out of this situation. Otherwise, we wouldn't have you for this job." Kenneth has been on our radar for a while. There are only about 1,200 well-known billionaires in the world. We found around 85 people who are very careful and private about their lives, especially when it comes to their money. We keep detailed records on each one of them. Money gives people power, and often power can lead to bad choices. It's true, really. It's just how people are. We don't worry much about small mistakes or personal problems, but we do care about political activities against the U.S. Kenneth is a big worry for us right now for many reasons. We'll get into that soon. But first, she picked up her phone and said, "Send Miss Smith in." The door opened, and a lovely woman walked in. It was Miss Smith, or Jennifer Smith. I recognized her from basic training, and it felt like a warm welcome. Elaine smiled and said, "Jim, you might remember Jennifer from basic training. You'll be working closely with her on this project." "Hello again, Jim," she said in her smooth voice. "Hi, Jennifer. It's great to see you again." I almost expressed too much excitement. I knew I needed to act professional. With everything that had happened lately, it was hard to keep my emotions in check. But Elaine stepped in to bring me back to business. "All right, let's skip the small talk. Jennifer, can you update Jim on the Kenneth project?" Jennifer became serious and maybe looked a bit sad. "I started working on the project about a year ago. I have a role in Kenneth's Washington, D.C. office, and I'm now the personal assistant to Mr. Randolph Boring, the office manager. He's 55 years old and he has a slick personality, but I don't trust him. He is from Switzerland but has lived in the U.S. for over 20 years now. I've been getting to know him better and have spent time with him. He is opening up to me, sharing more information than he should, even if it's not a lot. Plus, I have nearly complete access to all the files in the office. We have a good understanding of what Kenneth is doing in Iran and other confusing matters that are starting to clear up. I also have a connection to one of the top escort services in Washington, D.C., and I'm hoping Kenneth will hire me based on my pictures and profile. He has used this service in the past even after he began seeing someone named Cathy. "I'm sorry about your situation with Cathy, Jim," she said kindly. "It wasn't her fault. Kenneth is not a good person, and it turns out Cathy isn't much better." "Isn't that risky?" I asked. "If Kenneth hires you, won't he recognize you as one of his employees?" "Maybe, but I doubt it," she replied. "He doesn't spend much time in his Washington office. When he is in Washington, he mostly works from his hotel room and socializes at night. He has only seen me there a few times, and I look very different in person compared to the photos from my escort service. If I ever meet him, I will be dressed and made up differently as well. Also, there are quite a few professional women in Washington who do other work on the side. I could probably convince him of that without too much trouble. I had no doubt she could pull it off. She was smart and skilled in many ways. So what's going on? Haven't we lost with the whole Iran situation?" After looking at Elaine, Jennifer continued, "We are definitely behind in politics. Iran has a deal now, and a lot of money has changed hands. Iran is still working on their nuclear weapon development and their missile systems. Israel is worried. Iran has more money to support terrorism and buy technology from Russia and North Korea. They are improving defenses like anti-air and anti-missile systems and long-range missiles. But there are still options to slow them down or even reverse some of it. The last option might be targeted special operations to take out key scientists or labs. Even better would be getting proof of what they are doing. That could embarrass the current president and make liberal Western Europe turn against Iran. The best outcome would be for Kenneth to switch sides and support us and our beliefs. Of course, we would probably need some serious persuasion for that. From my view, he seems quite morally lost right now." She paused as both Elaine and she looked at me. I knew I looked worried. Elaine spoke up. "I know it feels like we don't have much of a chance. They seem to have the upper hand, and we feel hopeless. but I want to remind you both that many good people are working on this. You may not realize it, but there are ways to influence our tricky Congress members through normal lobbying and support for re-election, as well as setting traps for blackmail if needed to ensure they vote the right way. You two don't have to save the world alone. Just stay focused on your part and do your best. Okay, I'll leave you to it from here. Jennifer, why don't you take him to lunch while you keep him updated? I have another meeting to get to. Oh, and Jim, how is your Farsi coming along? What about your Russian? I think you need to catch up quickly on those languages. But keep practicing your Arabic and Chinese. Don't stress about Korean. We don't want to overload you. With that, she smiled at us again, her usual cheerful self. I really admired her happy personality. I was starting to like my new boss and my new job. The only downside was sleeping alone every night in my new but lonely apartment. Jennifer took me to a small, casual bar and grill in North Bethesda, not far from my office. My one-bedroom apartment was about as affordable as you could get near such an important place. We probably wouldn't run into any important people or acquaintances here, which was good for Jennifer in her secret work. "So why did you get married?" she asked right after we ordered, skipping the small talk. "Well, I never planned to be some kind of smooth talker in my career." "Right. You mean not like me?" "Exactly. You're beautiful and really stand out. Even among that whole group of talented women, you shine bright. You have both looks and brains. You would impress any normal guy. But me? Not really. I'm too short. I'm not ugly, but I'm not pretty either. I'm not even ruggedly handsome. I have thin hair and weak eyes. I always wear glasses. Even now, you can't really say I'm a natural when it comes to being attractive, like almost every other trainee around us. You might be surprised. Okay. I admit that you didn't get much attention from the girls or even guys during basic training until that first self-defense class. That's when you tossed that big, tough X seal across the room. My heart skipped a beat at that moment, and your appeal shot up. I doubt you've been a disappointment since then, at least in that area. As for your career, I've seen enough from your file to know you haven't always been faithful to Cathy. I understand you were just doing your job and didn't cheat for fun. But you must have known that some situations could come up for you. So why did you marry? It didn't help your career. In fact, it probably made things harder. You missed out on several opportunities because of your marriage to Cathy. I hadn't known that for sure, but I should have guessed. It was time to face the truth. Okay, I was foolish. It all started as a joke, just some practice with a girl I thought was totally out of my league in many ways. She was Jewish and came from a family that practiced their faith seriously. I was a Catholic boy and made that clear. She was almost as beautiful as you, and I must admit I thought she was even more my type. "Thanks for being so honest," she teased, but she smiled when she said it. "I can explain it more later if you're curious." "You shouldn't worry too much, so don't give me any of that kind of nonsense," I replied with a smile. I was a senior in high school and she had graduated already. Now she was in her second year of law school and was doing very well. She was determined to be among the best. Her father was also a lawyer, and he had set high expectations for her. His name was Benjamin Rosenbaum. She was working hard to join and eventually take over his law practice in Chicago. She wasn't interested in a party lifestyle in college. By the time I met her, she was very serious about her studies. She would go out sometimes for dinner with her law classmates and might have a drink at local bars. That's where I first noticed her and decided I wanted to get to know her better. I pursued her carefully. I did some research, and when just casual meetings didn't work, I befriended one of her classmates to be around her more. After she got used to seeing me with her friend Susan, I managed to have Susan break up with me in a rather dramatic way. I played sad for a while, and eventually, Cathy became my friend to help me through it. Before long, we were together as a couple. It was an unusual pairing, but it was actually easy because I didn't have much real competition. There was only one other guy, an old family friend, who was Jewish and seemed chosen for her, but he was often busy with his own studies at the University of Chicago Law School. Meanwhile, I was available. Plus, word did get around from Susan about how strong I was, and that made Cathy curious. Eventually, this curiosity brought us closer. I thought I had everything under control, but she surprised me. I was warned about falling in love, but she showed me she loved me deeply and without any hesitation. Our time together only confirmed that she would do anything for me and always said yes. I foolishly thought I could balance everything: my secret life, my job, and a loving fiancé at home. The year we were engaged until we graduated felt like paradise. Her dad was really mad, and because of that, she could no longer work at his law firm. However, she did well in school and was respected in her class. She looked impressive, too. She had many firms to choose from, but I got a good government job first. Because of that, she ended up working at a firm in Washington, D.C. I actually earned more money in my first year than she did, but that changed quickly after she passed her bar exam and started doing well in her job. Soon she was making a lot more money than me, yet we still enjoyed 3 great years of being married. I found it hard to keep everything going. Sometimes it feels impossible. It might have helped if I could tell her I wasn't just a simple worker, but probably not. Coming from a regular American Jewish family and being pretty liberal, she wouldn't be happy if she knew about my own views or the times I spent with other women. But it didn't matter much. Those women were always in faraway places like Riyadh or Shanghai, and I didn't have any real feelings for them. I was sure she thought helping Kenneth with the talks in Iran was fine. Just then, our burgers arrived, and we both took a moment to eat in silence. After a bit, Jennifer spoke again. "Thanks for sharing and being honest. I appreciate you telling me everything, but it seems like you're not completely sure what your wife is thinking or feeling at the moment. You could be mostly right, or maybe not. One of our jobs is to find the truth. You should talk to one of our psychologists, Dr. Ruth." "No, not that Dr. Ruth. She's great and very trustworthy. She studied theater before becoming a psychologist. She used to be a well-known actress. She can really help you. You should try to convince Cathy to see her, as well as a marriage counselor. Whatever Cathy tells her will stay private, and we will learn everything. Here's Dr. Ruth's name and number. Call her soon. Mention my name and get started. I know you're talking to Cathy now. Yes, I'm playing the sad husband card. We even had lunch together, and I'm in the I made a big mistake mode. I think she believes she has everything under control in the marriage. She thinks she can have me back just by saying so. Honestly, she could, but not for the reasons she thinks. Okay, remember to be careful. Let's go over some guidelines for us. First, we are partners in this, but I'm the top partner right now. I've been involved in this project much longer and know more than you do. For now, don't take it personally. We won't be able to meet in person very often. We can talk safely using your agency phone, voice messages, and email. You know the rules, right? Of course. I just need your contact details. My phone looked like a regular Android Samsung, but it was special. The phones we had were made in a plant in Austin, Texas. They were very expensive and created only for our agency. They could do everything a normal Samsung phone could do, but they also had secure and private communication features. Supposedly, even the NSA couldn't listen in on these conversations. Well, hopefully, no one else could either. That was the most important part. There will be times when we need to meet face to face, and for those times, we have a backup plan. That's where we are headed now, a budget motel where I've already booked a room. If anyone sees us together, our cover story is that we are just having a quiet, secret meeting. Even I, as an experienced escort, never use the same room twice or the same motel 2 times in a row. Hopefully, we won't draw any attention to ourselves. So she drove me there, and we entered the room, trying to act casual instead of nervous. As soon as we were inside, she pulled me close and kissed me. And I mean truly kissed me, just like that last moment we had so long ago at the end of our basic training. Wow. She sighed, saying it's still there. Yeah, I felt it too, but I was confused. Was that just part of our cover story? No, she said. It's something I've wanted to do since I found out I'd be working with you. I want to do more with you, like we did before, but only if you want to too. I still love my wife. I think about her a lot, and I was hurt when she left me for someone else. All the logical reasons didn't help with how I felt inside. It hurt me, but I also started to feel a longing that I hadn't expected. I missed the closeness I had when I was married, and Jennifer was beautiful and someone I already knew and admired. So yes, I would like to go back to that innocent connection we had. It was more than just physical, it was also simple and based on respect and liking each other. Funny enough, back then, it felt like there were no games involved, no hidden agendas on my part at all. If nothing else, I was pretty sure I could stop thinking about Cathy and feel better by focusing on my new friend. For at least an hour, maybe. So I did what any decent person would do. I paid attention to my new friend's needs, and we both enjoyed ourselves for a couple of hours. After some time resting, it was back to reality. I had to think about Cathy again, especially about her and Kenneth Turner, but somehow it hurt a little less now. We lay together, and Jennifer started to talk. "Poor Cathy," she said softly. "Maybe it's poor me," I replied. "Cathy is quite amazing both in and out of different situations. I choose you as the best no matter what, and I've had some experience in this." I looked down at her and she blushed a little, which surprised me. "Okay, I admit I've been with more people than you since we were together for just 3 weeks back in 2006, but I can promise I haven't had much real love in those moments. I had a couple of close relationships, but I ended them quickly. I knew my feelings would eventually come up. It wasn't fair to those people, and I cared enough not to keep them caught up in it." "So you've had more memorable experiences with Cathy, and now you face the same struggle I had. The question is, do you care enough about Cathy to let her go? It seems like she's already moving on. So what's my choice? Maybe we'll find out soon. Time is important in all of this, my dear. Whatever happens, I want you to know that you are a wonderful and caring person. You are loved. I believe you won Cathy's heart, and that she loved you and still does. She might think she no longer loves you, but I think that's not really true. The situation is tough now, and it might not end well for either of you. Our main goal should be the safety of our country and the protection of the United States and its values. We need to deal with the serious threat from a nuclear-armed Iran led by extremists. That danger must be managed. Things could get harder for you emotionally as this plays out. I need to know you can handle that. For example, I am trying to get closer to Turner to find out his secrets and figure out a way to influence him against Iran. One way is by being really enthusiastic in my relationship with my current boss, Randy Randolph. I've definitely made an impression, and I hope he'll share that with Kenneth. Randy is quite the flatterer. I'm sure he will want to be with me, but we know Kenneth doesn't like to share. However, he might try to take me away from Randy. That's what we hope for. More than the escort idea, a meeting with an escort usually lasts only one night or maybe a weekend at most. This way could last a bit longer. Jennifer looked at me and probably saw my frown. I was meant to be just a focused expert in this spy world, but I didn't like the thought of Jennifer wanting to be with the man I now saw as a personal rival. This was the wrong way to think, and Jennifer was trying to help me understand that. I knew this in my mind, but my feelings were getting in the way. I realized that if I couldn't manage my feelings, my job and intelligence might end very soon. You don't like this plan much because I'll be with Kenneth. I know I'll miss some things, and that feels a little hard to handle, but we both must do what we have to. Yes, dear. I nodded and agreed. Good. Because you might not like the backup plan either. If I can't create some kind of deep connection with Kenneth, we will have to try and use Cathy. She's already in a relationship and has great insight both at work and in her personal life. You can't do that. Changing our approach now is wrong. If she finds out you are really an intelligence agent, she will tell Kenneth everything without thinking. So we'll bring in a man like me, someone charming who can win over almost any woman he wants. And if simple charm doesn't work, he will find other ways to get what we need. I'm sorry, but this might be necessary. I felt a chill. Deep down, I knew this was the way things might go. It went against everything I believed in. It's easy to think about entering this job and facing personal challenges for a larger cause, but hurting someone I care about without their consent feels wrong. The end might sometimes justify the means, but that's a tricky road. Sure, Cathy isn't just an innocent person in this mess, but I'm not an innocent partner either. I chased after her for fun at first and never loved her enough to tell her the truth about who I was and what I could do when needed. I was not a good husband or partner. I should never have married her. It's time for me to grow up. I understand, I said quietly. I'm sorry, Jim. Please don't hate me. After a moment of silence, as we both thought about our feelings, I said, please stay tonight and just hold me. I don't hate you, and I never will. At least not any more than I hate myself for what I've done in this world. A perfect place will never happen here on Earth. It's impossible. There will always be pride and social issues that get in the way. Wanting to have it all is a tricky business. Chaos always seems to find a way to interrupt our lives. There's no escaping that. Bad things will always exist in the world. Most of it is just ordinary selfishness and greed, but there are also truly awful acts driven by a desire for control. Right now, your wife is caught up in a strong desire for power. We can't afford to lose this important game, and I refuse to believe we will. As I lay in your arms tonight, I feel confident about our success. We held on to each other throughout the night. Even though we worried about all the bad things that could happen, just being close to each other helped us find the rest we needed. I woke up early the next morning feeling good. It wasn't exactly the same as being together in a deeper way, but it was enough for both of us. We were ready to face whatever came next. I quietly left that cozy room before she had even gotten dressed. Now, it was time to see Dr. Ruth and start dealing with my life, which felt quite messy, Cathy. Things were not going the way I expected. I was tired, very tired, and completely worn out. I missed being married and having a man beside me each night, holding me close. Jim had done a decent job in that role. I was still seeing Kenneth quite a bit, but we never spent the night together. We would meet often with another woman, usually at his place or in a fancy hotel, but never at my condo. After it all, he would have me gently leave, with his staff taking me home in a limousine. Then the next day, I had to go to work. I still had my full-time job as a lawyer, but everyone accepted my role as Kenneth's main partner. Still, I didn't feel great about it, and I wasn't finding any real satisfaction in my career. Going out to parties or social events 3, 4, or even 5 times a week with Kenneth was becoming very tiring. I was realizing that the rich and famous weren't all that exciting. Night after night, it became clear to me that I wouldn't be seen as anything more than Kenneth's girlfriend. No matter how smart I am, many men at these events only seemed interested in winning over Kenneth by trying to charm me. It all felt like one big power game. The competition among the men felt like it came straight from their school days, fueled by their old insecurities. They were not good at flirting. Because they had money or power in other areas, they never learned how to be charming. Instead, they came off as rude and loud. I found myself drinking more than I ever had before, and it worried me a bit. I was also using too many other drugs, especially cocaine and ecstasy. When Kenneth finally showed up, I felt the effects of those substances messing with my sleep and making me tired. So here I was in a comfortable lounge, trying to relax a bit before heading back to my quiet apartment. Kenneth was currently flying on his private jet, heading to Tehran. He mentioned there was something important going on that needed his attention. He also said I should stay in Washington for the week, just in case. He promised he'd take me on his next trip abroad, no matter where it was. But honestly, I was beginning to feel indifferent about it all. A week off could be nice. It might help me catch up on some sleep. I thought maybe I could invite Jim over and spend the night together. He seemed to be in a needy state and would probably do anything I asked. Sigh. I once thought Jim was one of the strongest and most confident men I knew. Even when he was in college and younger than me, he stood out. Now, his constant complaining and sadness just made him seem smaller to me. How did things change so much? Have you ever felt this way? Maybe part of the problem was me. Perhaps I never fully grew up and was stuck in silly dreams. I used to believe Jim was destined for great things. He was not only strong, but also really smart. I imagined he would work for the CIA or the State Department one day. I felt proud of him and loved to show him off to my coworkers. No matter what he did, just knowing he had a secret job was exciting. I was thrilled when he got his first job. He just said it was with the federal government in Washington, D.C. I was shocked when I found out the truth. But maybe it was only a temporary position, a stepping stone to something greater. Yet that didn't seem to be the case. It felt like Jim lost all his drive, settling for a boring office job and spending time drinking and playing sports with his coworkers. I didn't understand it, and it became embarrassing to be seen with him at work events. I couldn't find anything to be proud of when it came to him in that high-stress, competitive world. He was kind and funny, always coming up with creative ideas to make things fun in our life. People would laugh at how naive both of us were. They thought I could be happier with some coffee without caffeine. At that time, things felt bad for me. Jim seemed to be pulling away. He never wanted to talk about his job or anything important about himself, especially concerning us. He mostly made jokes about himself and avoided sharing his dreams or plans. We never discussed having kids together. He even stopped practicing martial arts and going to church in Massachusetts. I also wasn't going to synagogue and started missing my own family a lot. I thought our love could help us overlook our different backgrounds. I didn't give up my Jewish identity, and Jim didn't change his Catholic beliefs. We got married in a small civil ceremony. Looking back, I realize we may not have been truly committed. We didn't join our lives in the way our religion suggested. We never discussed having children, and it seemed important to both our faiths. How would that even work for us? We needed to figure that out before having kids. Now that we weren't close anymore and our marriage felt broken, these questions seemed pointless. Maybe I should just leave Jim, quit my job, and go home to Baghdad to sort things out. I knew Jim would forgive me for admitting he was right all along. I thought about Kenneth, but I was fairly sure he wouldn't even notice I was gone. I sometimes dreamed of being rescued by a charming prince from my dull life. But Kenneth? He felt more like a regular guy with no real chance of being a loving partner and father. Just thinking about Kenneth as a dad made me uneasy. He never showed me any real kindness or warmth. It was mostly about him wanting what he wanted, which was getting tiring. He had the fame, fancy food, and gave expensive gifts. But all that started to feel heavy and dull. I sighed again, feeling stuck. Plus, I was still married to Jim. He called me earlier today, but I didn't pick up, like usual. He left a message checking in, but this one felt a bit different. Hi there. I just wanted to check in and see how your day is going. I have some news. I need to go out of town for work training next week. You might remember I got reassigned after we broke up, and this training is really important for my job. It's like a boot camp for me. I can't use my phone during this time. I can only give you a number to reach me in case of true emergencies. I'm sorry, so we won't be able to talk for about a week. Maybe this time apart will be good for us. I want you to know that I still love you. But I think I'm starting to realize that you may not feel the same way anymore. I've been talking to a counselor named Dr. Elizabeth Ruth. She's been helping me see things more clearly. I can share her number if you want to chat with her about me. It's all covered by my insurance, so don't worry about costs. I'll talk to you in about a week. Bye for now. It's just my luck that Kenneth and Jim are both away at the same time. Looks like I'll be alone without Jim this week. I might as well have a last drink before I head home. That's when another guy tried to hit on me. He was young and really cute and surprisingly charming. Lately, I've been getting a lot of attention from guys, even more than usual, and some of them are really attractive. This lounge is usually a busy spot, but it was early for that, which is partly why I came here. I just wanted a quiet drink to think through things. Somehow, this guy made me feel good, and before I knew it, I had him coming home with me. I felt a mix of excitement and worry, but at that moment, I just wanted to forget about my problems. On another note, I have access to a lot of information at work now, right from my office. Before, I needed a special key card to go to a hidden part of the building, but now I can get information without any trouble. I've been reading up on Kenneth Turner and the details about the Iran negotiations from my desk. I can also look up information from the large NSA database and talk to other people in my agency if I have questions. Kenneth's business mainly focuses on finance. He makes money by using his money wisely. He was like a money investor who funded a lot of shady businesses, many of which went against American values. It looked like he was involved in the drug trade, shipping opium and heroin from Afghanistan to Western Europe. He also seemed to participate in the international sex trade, where people were kidnapped and sent to places like Afghanistan and Thailand. Some beautiful women from Scandinavia found themselves trapped in forced situations in rich Arab countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt, and many Eastern European women were also tricked into these same types of situations in Turkey. Kenneth made a lot of money from financing weapon production and sales, too. This included making legal copies of firearms like AR-15S and AK-47S, as well as stealing and selling real military weapons. Selling ammunition and explosives was a huge market, especially with the rise of extremist groups worldwide. This was where Kenneth saw a big chance to earn even more money with the Iran deal. True, he made a few million by helping negotiate the nuclear deal, but he was hoping to make far more from the arms deals that would come next. His businesses could secretly acquire and ship all kinds of weapons and explosives to Iran, tapping into the $150 billion they had available. His companies could also ensure those weapons got to various groups in need around the world. Unlike the past, when Iran and Turkey tried to send big shipments through ships and trucks but faced problems, Kenneth had smart people on his team. He used some of the same methods the CIA had used successfully in the 1980s during the Cold War, when they helped Afghan fighters by getting them weapons through tricky channels. Long before the U.S. sent weapons directly, Kenneth believed that private businesses like his could do it better and for less money. He was a fairly ruthless character, always looking for his next chance to profit. As I kept looking into his background, I wondered if there was anything more than just the money motivating Kenneth. I soon found out something interesting. Kenneth was actually married, which seemed to be something not often talked about in the news. His wife, Farah, came from an Iranian-American family. Her grandfather, Reza Bakhtiari, had once been friends with a well-known businessman, H. Ross Perot, and worked with him in Iran when Jimmy Carter was elected president. He was smart enough to notice the signs around him, so he sold everything he could from his businesses in Iran before the Shah Pahlavi left the country. He may have had some advance warning, but he still managed to escape with his family and about $80 million. But he did escape, and that was enough for him to start fresh in California. He did very well in the U.S., mostly in luxury real estate development. Most of Kenneth's current wealth seemed to actually belong to his wife. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of agreements they had. Kenneth was certainly a billionaire on paper, and he had enough cash to support his wealthy lifestyle. But he might not be as rich as everyone thought. It also seemed odd. He was well liked in Iran, while many former Iranians like Reza and his family had left the country, taking money with them just before the extremists took over. Was there a chance that some negative feelings towards America among wealthy ex-Iranians existed in this powerful family? I tried to find more information about the family but found very little detail available. Simple questions like whether the family was Muslim or not had no answers. There had been some basic information on Farah Turner, Kenneth's wife. She had an address in Beverly Hills and seemed to stay out of the spotlight. She had wealthy friends and her tax returns showed major donations to some charities. She always filed her taxes separately from Kenneth, and her yearly income was between $5 to $10 million, mostly from interest and dividends from a couple of trusts and Kenneth Enterprises, LLC. This meant she had a paper fortune of $500 million to $1 billion herself. Why was she still married to him? For people like me, mysteries are chances to find out more. Knowledge may not be power, but it can often be a useful tool if used correctly. What did Farah look like? At 39, she was an attractive woman, not just beautiful in a typical way. Her wealth likely helped her look good in reality. She seemed comfortable in her own skin and looked nice naturally. For many women, this confidence comes from feeling loved. Did Kenneth really give her that love? Or maybe someone else did? Maybe I should consider her as a potential weak point for Kenneth. I brought this up with Jennifer through secure messaging during her lunch when she was alone in her office. Then I called her securely. "Hey," I started. "Can you talk?" "Hey, yourself," she replied. "When are you going to hire me again?" "I offer escort services." She was joking a bit. I said I would think about it after I got back from California. "Farah, you? Really?" "Yeah, I might want to do it. I know you could ask one of our handsome guys to approach her, but I feel like I might be the best choice right now. Maybe she even speaks some Farsi. I've learned a lot lately. I could pretend to be Iranian American. Do you think you could connect with her easily? I doubt just ringing her doorbell in Beverly Hills will work. I do need some help and more information about her. Can you have a team gather details on her for a week? Like what she does day to day. I think that would be helpful. I hope she's not just at home every day. Maybe she's involved in her charities. I know she does more than just donate money. She might even have a boyfriend. Okay, I'll ask Elaine about it. If she agrees, I'm sure she can make it happen. I've heard from reliable sources that we have many resources for this issue, but we're not making much progress elsewhere. I should find out by tomorrow. Do you need help with Cathy? Any updates? Not really. I can't push her too much. I asked her about being so close to Kenneth in public, and she seems to be avoiding a straight answer. I don't expect her to admit anything, though. She claims it's just business, but they respect each other as friends. When I asked her what kind of business, she avoided the question. She said, "Oh, Jim, that's private. And she doesn't want to share. Don't you trust me?" I tried to plead my case. Any suggestions? Get her on a date. Sorry to be so direct. I'm working on it. I doubt I could do it without help from Dr. Ruth. She's really smart. I'm about to try to get Cathy to visit her too. That might be my best chance. What about your handsome guy approach you had for her? She's hard to impress. We've already sent 2 of our best guys, but she turned them down. I'm thinking about sending a 27-year-old. Maybe someone who might remind her of you when you were younger. That's the best idea I have right now. By the way, Kenneth visited Randy's office 2 days ago, and I happened to look good that day. I had that shy but interesting look. Kenneth really seemed to notice me. I think he might have asked Randy about me. Randy gave me a knowing smile. I'm not sure if Kenneth liked that I'm dating Randy. That was always a chance I took, and I might have misread him. All right, I'll keep researching and reading everything I can. I'm going to work out later today with the security team at GSA. They like my training, and sometimes we even practice at the shooting range. I have a feeling things might get serious soon. The more I learn, the stronger this feeling becomes. It sounds good to be prepared, just in case. If you go to California, there will be a support team ready to help you with everything you need. Is there anything special you can't take on the plane? I prefer the FN-57 as my main weapon. I'll take at least 3 magazines and a shoulder holster, along with a belt holster too. I also want a Beretta 0.25 or a small .22 Magnum Mini revolver for when I need to carry something hidden. If I have to deal with someone quietly, I don't use guns anyway, so I don't need any silencers. But I'm heading out, and there's a special communication tool that my support team will have, along with larger weapons. Right. If you go, we will support you, and you'll get some special communication devices to take with you, like Bluetooth buttons for your shirt and pants that can send an emergency message through any phone within 60 feet or any computer with Bluetooth. So even if you're caught and your own phone is taken or broken, you can still send a personal call for help to our team with your exact location. Sounds good, right? Hopefully we won't need it, but I'll keep you updated. Goodbye for now. I laughed as I hung up. Jennifer sighed. Well, Kenneth did not notice me after all. At the end of the workday yesterday, Randy called me into his office. He seemed a bit too casual and made a suggestive remark. How about a little favor for what I have planned for you tonight, he said. I smiled sweetly and replied, maybe, but first tell me about this surprise. Kenneth Turner wants you at his penthouse at the Watergate at 9 p.m. tonight. He wants you to look the same as the other day when he saw you at work. You know, hair up, those stylish glasses, a fitted skirt, and a nice blouse. Shouldn't I be fresh for Mr. Turner? I said. I need to get ready. Of course, he replied. We'll meet again soon, I'm sure. Now give me a kiss for good luck. I gave him a quick kiss and left. I felt confident everything would turn out well in the end. I arrived at the agreed time, and one of Kenneth's assistants was waiting for me in the lobby to take me upstairs. I was led straight into the room. Kenneth was there, along with Jim's wife, Cathy. I had seen her picture and read some information about her before. She was very pretty, but she didn't seem to be at her best right now. She was dressed simply, wearing only her stockings. Her makeup was a bit messy, and one cheek looked redder than the other. Maybe someone had been unkind to her. Kenneth greeted me with a smile, saying he was glad I could come tonight. He added that if I was shocked, I could just leave, but he would be disappointed if I did. He spoke with a mix of confidence and a hint of disdain. I wasn't going to leave. He had every reason to feel superior, but he might not have felt that way if he knew why I was so eager to be there. I smiled and walked towards them, but Kenneth stopped me. He instructed Cathy to come over and interact with me for a bit. He seemed pleased with himself, showing he liked being in control. Cathy didn't look very happy, but she crawled to me on her hands and knees. The rest of the night went similarly. Kenneth was very dominant, and Cathy seemed to follow his every command to the point where I actually felt sorry for her. Kenneth also had some strong drugs, which seemed to make everything feel different. After it was all over, there was no time for conversation. Around 3 a.m., the night ended, and Cathy and I were politely escorted out by his security team. We shared a ride in the limo, and I tried to talk to Cathy gently. "What a night, huh?" I said. She smiled back. "Is he always like this?" I asked. "That's about normal. I work for him in Washington, D.C. He finally noticed me, I guess." "Do you work for him too?" I inquired. "In a way," she replied. "I'm one of his lawyers. I'm with him most nights now. It's usually me and a new girl each time. It's not what I expected, but I'm starting to be okay with it." "Really?" I said. "Do you think about it differently now?" She smiled slightly. "Hey, do you want to come home with me tonight?" I offered, hoping to connect more. "No, not really, thank you, but I'm not really interested in that. I just do what Kenneth wants. I thought I could change him at first, but now it feels like he changed me." After that, conversation stopped. Soon we arrived at her condo. The driver helped her out of the car, and as she got out, she said, "Well, goodbye, Jennifer. I'm not sure if I'll see you again. It usually ends up just being one-night things for people like you. I'm the lucky one who gets to do this many times." I said that in a sad way. I felt disappointed if this would happen to me too, just one night. But after Cathy left the car, the driver got a phone call. He turned and handed his phone to me. "It's for you." It was Kenneth. He wanted to see me again and asked if I would travel with him out of the country. "You have your passport, right? If not, I can probably help you." "Okay, great." Since we'll be on a private jet for the trip, I had to pretend to be really excited. "Yes, I have a passport. I've never used it, but I thought it would be nice living in DC. Where are we going? How long? What about my job?" "No worries about your job. You actually work for me, don't you? I'll talk to Randolph and it will all be sorted. Just bring your regular business clothes and maybe 1 or 2 casual outfits. A limo will pick you up at 1 p.m. tomorrow. It will be fun." "Okay, thanks. I'll see you tomorrow." I tried to sound excited, but I was a little worried. We didn't have much in Tehran or even in all of Iran. We had sent teams there for specific tasks, but it was tricky to work safely in that strict regime. The government had a security system that was much tougher than what it was like before. The year after their leader took complete power, this new security group caught and punished more people than the previous leader had in 25 years. Now we were in a rush with hardly any time to prepare and dealing with someone we couldn't trust, possibly even a dangerous person. The way he treated Cathy, especially her, worried me. I called Alain first and we had a quick talk. There wasn't much time. It was 4 a.m. and I guessed you hadn't even slept yet. "Let's meet at 9 a.m. at Jim's office. Just an hour unless we decide you shouldn't go. That will give you time to pack for the pickup at 1 p.m., right?" "Yeah, I'll be ready. Hopefully I can get some rest on the plane after I talk to Kenneth. I'm not looking forward to telling Jim about Cathy. Don't worry. Get some sleep, and I'll see you at 9. I'll inform everyone else." I left my apartment at 8:30 and grabbed breakfast at a fast food place. I checked for any followers before I drove around a bit with no clear direction. Then, I parked in a public garage near Jim's office building and some shops. No other cars seemed to follow me, and no one appeared to be watching me. When I entered, I took the elevator down 1 floor, then stepped out into the office building instead of going back down to the street level and outside to the stores. There were 5 of us in this urgent meeting. Me, Jim, Elaine, a high-ranking guy named Rob from our group, and a man named Ralph, who seemed to lead the agency's Iranian section. Rob was in charge. "Jennifer, give us the details," he said firmly. I spoke up. I explained that I spent the night with Kenneth and another woman who was there with him. Elaine interrupted and said, "Just get to the point." So I added, "The other woman was Cathy, Jim's wife." I didn't really know how things were with Kenneth and thought it would be a one-time thing. It felt more like a casual encounter without much real talk or connection. Kenneth didn't cuddle or bond with anyone. Cathy and I both left together in a limo driven by one of his security team. She thought this would be the end for me. But Kenneth called and invited me again, using his driver's phone. I know I have my own charm and skills, but so do Cathy and many other women in our city. So why was he suddenly interested in me? I didn't believe Cathy would go along with any of this, and I didn't think Kenneth would abandon her just to be with me. Jim quickly voiced his concerns, thankfully not mentioning Cathy right away. "I don't think Jennifer should go. Not like this, and definitely not without some backup. We know part of Kenneth's business involves serious crimes like trafficking, and Jennifer would be valuable to them, either for money or as a bribe to someone in Iran." "What are the risks versus the rewards here?" Elaine jumped in again. "Jim makes some good points. We don't know why this trip is happening so suddenly. We haven't received any information about any problems. It seems rushed and out of the ordinary. Plus, Kenneth might be able to take Jennifer out of the country without anyone noticing. From Kenneth's perspective, she might just seem like a nobody who wouldn't be missed for a long time if she disappeared. He might not even need to tell anyone what happened. But what could Jennifer learn if it was just harmless fun? Let's consider this, I said. It would depend on him getting careless with his phone calls or his papers when I'm around. If he plans to leave me there for any reason, I don't think he would just hand me over right away, as that would spoil his fun. More likely, it would happen at the end of the trip, and that could mean he might drop his guard and let some secrets slip. What's really happening? I think I'll be safe until the end. I will have to leave him before then because I can't escape from Iran by myself at that point. What other help can we get? We all looked at Ralph, our contact in Iran, who had a frown on his face. I have some people who have been undercover for many years. If they are still working with me, I don't want to use them for something like this, especially when the chances of success seem low. No hard feelings, Jennifer. But if it's just about saving yourself and not gaining anything else, then it might be better not to go at all. And please don't put my people at risk. We might be able to set up a small support team if we have at least 4 days to prepare. But that means putting 4 or 5 other lives at risk too. Maybe we could gather some useful information. There was a pause before Rob spoke. I understand your worries, Ralph. I've overseen agents myself and know how stressful and painful it can be. They are your agents, but ultimately you don't decide. I do. Right now, I'm considering letting Jennifer go if she truly wants to. She would be going willingly. She is the only one who has worked closely with Kenneth. I'll go, I said immediately. Both Elaine and Jim said almost at the same time, No, Jen! Rob nodded. Okay then, let's proceed. Ralph, do your best to keep your people safe. Help them while we get Jennifer out. Jim then said, Ralph, I want to be on the support team. I speak Farsi really well, and I can blend in as Iranian without any trouble. I have skills that might surprise you, ask anyone. Elaine and I protested together, but Jim just smiled. Rob assured Ralph, he'll do great. I'm not against it, but you make the final decision, Elaine said. What about California and Farah, Jim? I have made progress on that, Elaine. I can take care of it in just 1 day now. If I'm correct, I can fly there tomorrow, Saturday, finish up by Monday, and come back the same night. Then we need to get to the support team's meeting location before we go in. Does that sound good, Ralph? The meeting spot is in northern Iraq, Kurdistan, where we have strong support. We can get you there using U.S. military transport in less than 24 hours from anywhere in the country. So that works. If we set up a meeting for early Wednesday morning, we can be in Tehran by that afternoon. Jennifer, does that sound reasonable to you? I think I will be with Kenneth until at least Friday. I'll do my best to make him want to keep me around as long as possible, and I want time to learn more. A key question is how we will communicate. I hope he will let you keep your phone. He probably doesn't think it will work in Iran, but it does have a little bit of satellite capability that he doesn't know about. You will also get a local phone number in Tehran with voicemail. You can make calls from any local phone, hotel, or so on, unless he plans to keep you on his plane the whole time. I will also give you some Bluetooth buttons and jewelry that you can hide on your clothes. I'll show you how they work. That will only take a few minutes before you leave. Rob took charge again and said, Okay, let's finish this meeting. Let's hope for the best, but be ready for anything. Keep your phones on you until 12:30 p.m. today. If anyone thinks of anything else after that, don't call Jennifer, but let her lead all communications. If you want to go with Ralph now, Jennifer, it's probably time. I will stay a bit longer to discuss the Farron situation. We watched Jennifer walk out. She looked tired but determined, and she smiled at me and Elaine as she left. I still felt uneasy, but I was going to talk to Ralph until I knew I was part of her support team. As soon as they were gone, Elaine asked me, What's the news on Farah? I think she might have a couple of kids. It's not very clear and they seem to be missing. There is so much information about people today, it can be overwhelming. Those background check websites are not reliable, but the NSA has lots of information that includes marriage records, divorce records, births, deaths, real estate deals, driver's licenses, and car registrations, plus all the news about these events. All that provides a lot of details about one person or family. With the advanced search tools, I have been looking into this nearly every day last week. The first result was for Farah Turner and a person named Bakhtiari. Another possible name is Farah Selman, who was married to Cyrus Belmonte in 1997. They had 2 kids, Yasmin, a girl born in 1998, and Darius, a boy born in 2000. A divorce was recorded in LA County in 2005, and just a week after the divorce was final, Farah Bakhtiari became Mrs. Farah Turner. She must have changed back to her maiden name right after the divorce ended. After that, there were no public records about the children. One simple idea is that Farah and Kenneth were seeing each other while she was still married, and once she separated from Cyrus, she married Kenneth right away. That makes sense. Maybe the children are at a private school somewhere. Wealthy people often have to be careful about their children. There's always a risk of kidnapping for ransom, and she had enough money to have many options for keeping her kids safe. There are still many unanswered questions, and I believe that talking to Farah for just one day could help clear things up. Cyrus Selman has also gone missing. He was from Iran and got asylum status along with a student visa back in 1995. Where could he be? Are the kids with him? I already found a way to meet her. She has a meeting planned for Sunday at 2 p.m. with her favorite event planner for a charity garden party at her house. I will be his assistant, which will give me a chance to speak with her then. Our team did a fantastic job digging up all that information so quickly, and they really managed to get Andre to share what he knew. Ellen just used a straightforward approach, with some firm reminders about what could happen. Money was part of the plan, too. He was more than willing to help out. I assume you've sorted out your travel plans. I have a flight to LA at 2 p.m. today. Someone will meet me at the airport. They might call you to update you. Someone will either pick you up or let you know which hotel to go to and then meet you there later. They'll have everything you need for your stay. Call me as soon as your meeting with Farah is done. The next 2 days will be tough for me. I'm worried about Jennifer and Cathy, and I have too much time to think while I travel. Jennifer called me right before she got picked up by Kenneth's car. "Hey," she said. "Hey, yourself." I kept my tone neutral. "Don't be like that. I'll be all right. I know what I'm doing." I sighed. "I know Iran is a really dangerous place right now. It's tough for people like us, really anyone except for the extremists." "Well, if things go badly, you'll rescue me, right? Or you could just not go." "It's my job, Jim. What I do is important." "But that's not why I called. It's about Cathy. Please listen to me. She's really unhappy. She's in a bad place right now. She made some poor choices. Maybe she should have left you before, given how your marriage was going. But not like this. She understands that now, and she is struggling. If you get a chance, who knows, just try to be kind. Think about it, and I'll see you in about 5 days when you're back from California. I really hope you hire me again soon." "Okay, me too. Be careful, all right? I care for her. Bye for now." That made me smile a little. She sounded just like a character from a movie when she said that. The meeting with Farah turned out to be somewhat uneventful. Andre was the typical loud and lively event planner. He brought a lot of energy, which helped me to have a quiet and serious conversation with Farah. Her home was nearly the perfect example of luxury living. In Beverly Hills, the rich and famous often surrounded themselves with strong, fit workers. They looked like bodyguards, or maybe even guards in a prison. One of these workers lingered in the room while I talked to Farah, but eventually he had to leave. This was my chance to reach out to her. I showed her my fake government ID and made a promise to help her if she needed it. I mentioned something about getting her kids back. I didn't expect much from this idea, but it struck a nerve. Farah almost cried, but years of being tough kept her calm as we talked. Her children were taken by her ex-husband, Cyrus, who took them to Iran without her knowing. When this happened, Cyrus seemed like a faithful man, but he was not. He was in the U.S. under false claims. In truth, he worked for Iran and had his own plans. He seemed to be trying to recover some money that was trapped by U.S. laws related to an old crisis. Cyrus might also have had other dark missions on his mind. Still, he managed to charm Farah, and they married after she became pregnant. Her wealthy family made sure to protect her money with a strong contract, but it didn't save her from his deceit when he took her kids away. Now, Farah had no idea if Cyrus was even alive. Her son, Darius, was in a school in Iran, and her daughter, Yasmin, lived with a family that took care of foster kids. Kenneth Turner showed up soon after her children disappeared, claiming that he could help her. Kenneth said he had connections in Iran because of his business. He even showed her proof, like video messages of her crying kids. He proposed a plan. If he became her children's stepfather, he could speed up her divorce from Cyrus. Once this was done, they could marry, and he could bring in the international courts for help. Kenneth was clear that he only wanted access to Farah's money, not anything else. His plan was not just a fake marriage, it was a scam. Their honeymoon was actually a trip to Iran, where she would finally get to see her children again, but only for a week. Soon, the truth came to light. Kenneth was being controlled by someone in Iran, and Farah had to give large amounts of her money to charities he chose. For all of this, Farah had the chance to see her children once each year for 2 weeks. She received occasional letters and videos from them, along with a promise that they would return to her soon, and her difficult situation would be over. But now her son Darius was 16 and deeply influenced by his surroundings. Yasmin was 18 and already promised in marriage to someone from a powerful family in Iran. This was a promise Yasmin had no control over. Farah was feeling helpless and would do anything to work with us if we could just assist her. I assured her that I would help as much as possible. I was ready and gave her one of our special phones. It had important pre-programmed numbers, and when it was off, it was truly off. The battery was disconnected when the off button was pressed, making it hard to find even with advanced tools. All Farah needed to do was keep it safe and hidden from her guards. We needed details about where her children were in Iran, the name of the school, any teachers' names, or any other landmarks. Whatever information she could provide might help us find them faster. This meeting went better than I had expected. The best part was that we now had a way to communicate with her, and I could leave that very night. By Sunday, I had argued enough with Alan, Ralph, and Rob that Ralph eventually agreed, and Rob just said to get me out of his way. I was just waiting for directions to the U.S. Air Force Base for my trip to Iraq. It turned out to be Nellis Air Force Base near Las Vegas. One of my team members drove me in his classic Mustang. I didn't know much about cars, but it got me there quickly. 2 hours later, I was trying to catch some sleep in the back of an AC 130 heading east. I would be in northern Iraq in less than 24 hours. Other people were traveling with me, but they didn't seem interested in talking. They looked at me curiously. I didn't appear military. I shouldn't have, but I spoke to the master sergeant who was staring at me. He told me to speak English, so I just smiled and turned away. Honestly, I was just bored for the next day or so. We made our first stop in Florida at Duke Field, part of Eglin Air Force Base. My somewhat unfriendly fellow travelers left me there. One of the crew members came up and said, "You're Mr. Richardson, right?" I nodded. He continued, "You have a 4-hour break here before we take off again to Europe. There are some nice traveler facilities you can use if you'd like. In the cafeteria, there were showers and comfy bunks to rest on. Just make sure to be back on the ship before 8 p.m. If you're not back by then, no one will come looking for you." He smiled when he said it, so I figured it was all in good fun. It was getting dark, almost 8:30 p.m., and the Florida heat was still heavy for June. Since I had a chance to shower, I thought a quick run would be nice. I didn't think anyone else would be out at that hour, but I did see a few people on the running path. This place was a special operations training hub. Everyone I saw looked very fit. They wore simple shorts and running shoes with no visible unit logos or ranks. There was one woman wearing a sports top, and I felt a bit out of place as the only one who didn't seem to belong to a group. I imagined they were all wondering why I was out there. My half-hour run at a decent pace helped clear my mind and stretch my muscles. I felt good, and it was nice running again. You never know when being fit and ready could be useful. After my run, I took a refreshing shower and changed clothes from my small bag. I enjoyed a good meal and drank plenty of water to replace what I lost while sweating. I was feeling good and hoped to catch some sleep on the next leg of my journey, which would likely take me to the UK. I boarded the plane 15 minutes early, and soon about 16 other guys joined me. They all seemed to be military, and I guess they were real professionals. They were polite but ignored me. We all traveled together to Almeria Air Base in Kirkuk, northern Iraq. When we arrived about 22 hours later, I began looking for my contact. 8 of my fellow travelers got off the plane. Finally, one of them spoke to me. "Are you Richardson?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "We're with you, or maybe you're with us right now. We're here as backup for your operation near the Iranian border. We have orders not to enter Iran unless it's very important, but we are close to the border." I learned there would be Black Hawk helicopters, Apache support, and drones to help with our mission. So, what's the plan? I asked. I can't say too much right now, as I'm not sure myself. I'm supposed to meet up with some other team members. You might think of them as spies and we'll brainstorm together. All I know is we need to get some important people out of Iran at any cost. I wasn't sure how much help they would be in Iraq, but I promised to keep them informed. My boss is a good man, and when he gave me these orders, he did it with a secretive smile. I understood what that meant. I can do what I think is necessary for this mission to succeed, but if it leads to a big problem between countries, we will be on our own, and he might lose his job. He could even end up in prison. That's just how things are right now in our troubled country. I hear you and I appreciate it. My team feels the same way. I just want to say that this mission is very important for the safety of the people in the U.S. It's really about helping everyday folks, not just the powerful people in Washington, D.C. I had some close friends in SEAL Team 6 who were lost on that messed-up mission in Afghanistan, right after Osama bin Laden was taken out. Everyone I know in special operations believes that wasn't just bad luck. Coincidence? We all think it was some politician's misguided idea to show fairness or to make other countries happy after taking out one of their heroes. I'm talking too much, but I want you to know we'll do our best for your mission. Anyway, my orders are to take you to a place further north, closer to the border. We'll be in some Iraqi army trucks, but these Iraqis are some of the kind Kurds. I bet your team is already there. Sounds good. Give me 5 minutes to make some calls and then I'll catch up with you. I call my agency phone. Elaine speaking. Yeah, it's me. I'm in Kirkuk with some guys I flew in with and I just found out they're here with me. Is that correct? Yes, we've been working hard setting things up. Just follow their lead for now and you'll get all the details for your next stop. Having fun yet? Oh, definitely. Spending basically 22 hours on a plane is a blast. Any news from Jen? Not yet. As far as I know, everything is okay. Farah has been really helpful. We got a lot more information from her and you'll get all those details at your next stop. Also, one of our people made a connection with Cathy. He thinks we should bring her in, be honest with her, and she'll cooperate. She really dislikes Kenneth right now, even more than you. You mean he was close with her? Yes. And just to be clear, Cathy dislikes you because you left her. Plus, you put her in a tough position. That's what she said. And yes, he was close with her all night long, but he just held her. She's not in a good place right now. Even though Cathy told Flynn how much she dislikes you, she also saw a doctor for help. I'll help in any way I can. Also, first thing Monday morning, I don't think she feels like wanting to hurt you in a major way just yet. Not quite that far. I'll let the doctor handle the rest of your questions about Cathy. After this week is over, things should get back to normal. Thanks for the update, Mom. Right now, getting Jennifer and maybe the Ferris kids out of Iran needs to be our main goal. Talk to you later. Be careful, Jim. I'm sure we'll chat again before you go in. Bye. I found myself in a small town called Penguin, not far from the border. There was a main crossing point on a good road that went between Penguin and Smack, Iran. However, we weren't using that crossing officially. I believed I had finally met my team, and they looked like regular Middle Eastern men. They had some clothes for me that were similar to what most men in Tehran wore. They all spoke Farsi like it was their first language. Most of them were American Iranians, and one seemed to be Iranian and likely worked for Mossad. Someone was really calling in some favors for this mission. Jews had lived in Iran quite well for a long time, especially under the Shah. Pahlavi had even kept unofficial ties with Israel and took care of pro-Shah Jews. But after Ayatollah Khomeini took over, things changed a lot. Any remaining pro-Jewish groups faced serious issues now. My team seemed a bit cautious until they heard my Farsi and learned about my knowledge of Islamic culture and beliefs, especially the differences between Shiite and Sunni. Once they were satisfied, they relaxed and accepted me, but it was clear I was not in charge. I was still the best link with the special operation team that brought me here. Apparently, their orders were to listen to me above anyone else. I think they were Delta Force, with a lieutenant leading them. He and his second-in-command joined all our briefing sessions, but they didn't use military titles. They went by Bill and Pete. We set up our communication plans and thought about all the ways things could go wrong. Then we tried to figure out how to tell each other and fix any problems. Unfortunately, there were countless ways it could fail. We had too many unknowns and we didn't even know when Jennifer would get in touch to start everything. Thankfully, We were all in place a whole day early on Tuesday for our first planning. We planned to go in using a local dirt road smuggling route before dawn the next day, driving 2 old pickup trucks that looked a bit worn down. A few local Kurds would help us and also transport some light but high-value items like spicy DVDs they were sneaking into Iran. That was just part of their usual work. That night, around 8 p.m., we received some news. Jennifer had contacted her operations center using a local phone. Her message was short. She shared her hotel and room number, mentioning that everything was on track for her plan on Thursday morning when she was going for a run. We needed to be near that hotel early Thursday at the latest. She also mentioned a problem involving someone named Yasmin who had escaped or run away. A high-ranking official was very worried about her. Kenneth, the boy named Darius, was safe for now, but we might need him to help find Yasmin. Kenneth was talking openly in front of Jennifer, which made it seem like he might be in trouble in Iran. When Kenneth left, we didn't get much more information. We still didn't know exactly where Darius and Yasmin were being held, but Farah sent us the latest pictures to our phones and tablets. The NSA had all their tools focused on Kenneth Peters, a well-known businessman in Tehran. This also included Darius and Yasmin's situation, who might be using phones or the internet to communicate. If Kenneth was careless talking around Jennifer, he might make mistakes with his electronic messages too, given his busy lifestyle. He couldn't stay completely disconnected for over a week. I wished I had more details about the high-ranking official. I wondered if we could start applying some pressure on him politically. Back in D.C., I called Elaine to discuss it. Now let's see what Cathy was up to. On Saturday night, after Kenneth and Jim left town, I had a few too many drinks. I brought home a charming Irishman named Flynn. I knew what he was likely expecting, but instead of leaving when I started crying, he held me and comforted me, even when I fell asleep in his arms. He stayed with me through the night, and I found myself sharing my problems with this stranger. The next morning, I realized that it was the most restful sleep I had in weeks. I vented about Kenneth, my disappointing husband, and Flynn listened without judgment. Was this guy really as kind as he seemed? It felt too good to be true. He even made breakfast and left me his card, asking me to call if I wanted to talk again. After a good night's rest, I felt surprisingly better. But when I listened to Jim's last message, hearing his voice made me miss him a lot throughout the day. So I took some time to rest and relax and reflect. I slept for another 9 hours that night and got to work early the next day. I looked for something to do, especially if it had to do with Kenneth. Right now, his work was all I really had. Around 9:30, I called Dr. Ruth, as Jim had asked me to do. She told me she had an opening at 2 p.m. today. If I missed this chance, I would have to wait until next Monday to see her. That was fine with me since Kenneth was out of town, so I decided to go. Dr. Ruth was a nice older lady, about 50, with a warm and friendly personality. She talked to me about patient confidentiality and said Jim had allowed her to share what they discussed about his feelings and troubles. I was very curious and asked her what his issues were. "It's hard for me not to answer your question with another question," she said with a smile. But then she became serious. "Jim is not happy right now. He feels confused and is dealing with some sadness. He really misses his wife." She explained that Jim wasn't sure what went wrong. He thought he acted out of jealousy and accused me of being unfaithful without any proof. He admitted he was playing a game when he left me, but then things became more complicated. "He still loves you," she said. "He tells me this often, but he's starting to wonder if love is enough. He does respect your feelings and decisions, though. Can you share your thoughts on how you and Jim got to this point? I won't tell him anything you say unless you let me." She wanted to know so she could help Jim better. I thought she was very trustworthy, just like Flynn. I nodded in agreement. I was unfaithful to Jim. I considered it an affair and possibly a reason for the end of our marriage. When Jim left, I believed I was falling in love with someone else and thought he could become my next husband. Looking back, I realized how wrong I was. There was another pause as Dr. Ruth waited patiently. "Honestly, it feels good to talk about this. I've been unhappy too over the past few weeks." "Could you take me on as a patient as well?" I asked. She replied, "Sure, but just to be clear, are you looking for individual sessions or couples counseling for now?" I responded, "I'm not sure if I want to stay in this marriage. I'm scared to face Jim and tell him everything. And I don't think he would want to stay with me if I did. It's all such a mess now. I always thought I was a good person, a good woman, and a good wife. I believed I was someone special, worth more than gold. Now I don't feel I have any value to anyone. This is when I first reached for the box of tissues. Crying was a good sign. It was actually helpful for everyone involved. After a moment, Dr. Ruth asked softly, "Can you tell me a bit about the other man? Was he the first one you were close to, either in person or just emotionally? Did you have problems with Jim in your relationship? Or maybe you felt distant from him? Maybe it was because of work or other commitments. Jim is really worried about these things, even without knowing for sure if anything actually happened. I'm sure you know I'm a lawyer. The man is a client of mine, and because of my work with him, I can't say too much. But I will say that Jim has asked about him before. And Jim was right. I'm not sure why I did it, but I felt like I was losing respect for Jim as a man and as my husband over the last 2 years. I became less interested in him and his job. Jim seemed to have lost his drive. I used to think he was very smart and on his way to achieving great things. Sigh. There was more silence. The men I worked with every day were more driven and ambitious. They were lawyers and politicians and their top helpers. Jim just had a typical job and played some sports like softball, then drank beer with his friends once a week. I still loved him. Our intimacy was good, if not great, right until that day he just left. But I loved him, not in the way a woman should love a man she shared a close relationship with. I was confused about my feelings. Then this other guy seemed to offer me so much more. I found him physically attractive, but it was his power and confidence that really drew me in. He had money too, but it was the strength and self-assurance that came from that money that made me feel weak in the knees. It wasn't just about the money itself. Do you understand what I mean? Oh yes. Cathy, these feelings are quite normal for many women. In all cultures, these feelings can't always be controlled by everyone, but as an individual you had a choice, and you decided to give in to those feelings. Please don't think I'm judging you in any way. I'm just sharing my thoughts. Would you disagree? More silence. You already know me well. I started wearing pretty underwear around him before I gave in to my feelings. So yes, I made a choice. I can't blame anyone else for it. It just happened. I lost control. You are right about that. Here's something for you to think about as we finish our first chat. Have you decided not to love Jim anymore? If you have, why? Is there something Jim could do now to change your mind? For example, could he win your love back? Did he earn your love at first? Or did you simply give it to him? I'll think about this. He really did charm me after we became friends. It all started way back in college. But I think I let my feelings get too strong before I fully loved him. Once we were close, I really did fall for him. Maybe that was him earning my love. I need to think more on this. Thank you for your help. I may not be as unhappy as Jim right now, but you can tell him I'm not really happy with my new life without him. That is true. Even though it doesn't mean we can just live together again and fix everything. Okay, Cathy, I'll place you on my schedule for this time every Monday. Is that all right with you? Here's my card with my phone number. Please call me anytime you need to talk about anything. I mean it. I often do this with patients I think are having a tough time. You and Jim are in that place right now. Sadly, as soon as Cathy left, Dr. Ruth called Elaine. I had my first meeting with Cathy. It went well overall, but I couldn't get much specific information about Kenneth. I can see why Flynn thinks the way he does. At the right time, we can bring her in to help. In my opinion, she still loves Jim, and we can use that as a last option, but we must be careful. She is smart and complicated. She has my card and Flynn's too, and we just hope she reaches out to one of us soon. Entering Iran was easy. There was no fuss. There were 8 of us in total and 2 old Toyota pickups. Our 2 Kurdish Iranian drivers were legal citizens with proper IDs. They were also kind of legal Iraqis. The Iranian Jew, Adel, had his own documents that seemed real. The rest of us were with an agency and had nice-looking ID cards as well. This national ID was needed for almost any legal business in Iran, from banking to getting a hotel room. They would surely pass any quick check, and I believed even a deeper computer check would verify them. My Iranian name was Habib Ibrahimi, and my photo looked good. It had that basic ID mugshot style. Our leader was a man named Fad Gul. He looked to be in his mid-40s and seemed very sure of himself. It felt like he had spent a good amount of time in Tehran and knew some people here. Our safe house was an apartment located south of the downtown area in a less wealthy part of the city. The nicer areas were to the north. We arrived right at noon and unloaded our big backpacks without drawing any attention. Most of what we carried were our weapons. We had some old AK-74 rifles and Tokarev 9mm pistols. I also had a beautiful Afghan knife with an 11-inch blade. I hoped I could keep it as a keepsake if I made it out alive. I had asked for a large local knife, but this one was much nicer than I expected. Knives don't run out of bullets, and many men around the world are actually scared of them. We also brought about 4 pounds of Semtex explosives each, which also came from the Czech Republic. Each of us had a couple of changes of clothes, including at least one nice outfit. We might need to go to Jennifer's upscale 4-star hotel dressed well to blend in. Tehran is a very modern city and offers many advantages like good public transport, including taxis and the ability to blend in with the crowd. We all looked normal, acted casual, and talked like everyone else. Even our drivers had their own appointments but promised to leave us a truck. They said they would be back with another truck by 6 p.m. Jennifer and Kenneth were staying in a suite on an upper floor, likely room 1009, at the Firdausi Grand Hotel, which wasn't far from our place. Maybe a 10-minute drive in regular traffic. I spoke with Fahd, and he agreed that we could check out the area around the hotel. The others decided to pair up and do the same. We all planned to grab some food while we were out. No one took any weapons in case the police or the morality patrol stopped us. Our innocent looks and proper paperwork were enough to keep us safe. Adele and I had studied enough of the Quran to be able to communicate fairly well. It went smoothly. We walked around, acting like we had somewhere to go. We found an alley behind the hotel that had several doors and a loading dock. This included an entrance to a basement area. Everyone returned by 5:30 p.m. along with our drivers. However, instead of a pickup truck, they brought a panel van. We decided to switch to it, thinking it might be better for hiding people. It might not go all the way on rough roads, but we still had one 4-wheel drive Toyota as backup. Adele brought up that he had stayed in that hotel a couple of times before. He suggested that maybe I could book a room there. That way, I'd be closer if something urgent came up. I was nervous that we might get a call for help at any moment, and being 10 minutes away felt too risky. "Can you try to reserve a room for 2?" I asked. "Sure, I'll make a call," Adele replied. Forehead, another friend, agreed, saying it could work well. "We could also park the van nearby and have a couple of guys watching things," he added. "People always hang around hotel lobbies." Adele stepped out to make his private call. Soon he returned to say, "I've got a 5th-floor room for 2. My name, Idaho number, and credit card info are already on file. The person checking in will just need to show their ID, and that will probably be me," he stated firmly. I felt a bit uneasy. Something about the situation seemed off to me. Maybe I was just being overly cautious. Jennifer meant a lot to me. She was more than just a co-worker. I knew that Adele's group was not exactly like mine, so I decided to reach out to my own team to see if they had any updates. "Adele, what's the security like at that hotel?" I asked. "It's pretty standard for a 4-star hotel. They have cameras everywhere and their own security team who work closely with the local authorities. There's a control room that records everything. They also have uniformed police nearby," he explained. I realized that if we needed to help Jennifer quickly, someone might see us and raise an alarm. "What if they recognize us later?" I asked. "How good are you at disguises?" Adele chuckled. "Oh, I have that part covered. What about you?" "I have a kit with colored contacts, I can switch out my glasses, and I have fake facial hair and makeup. It should be enough to make it hard for facial recognition systems to identify me," I answered. Then I called my contact Elaine to get more updates. "Hi, do you know anything new?" I asked. "No word from Jennifer. Her phone is off now, and it happened this morning," she responded. "We were tracking it, but it's either damaged or being protected in some way. If the main battery was removed, a backup battery could still send a signal every 30 seconds for a day." I asked about her Bluetooth tracking, and Elaine responded, "We don't have any updates. It's all silent for now, but we're working with the NSA to see if we can intercept anything. There was a call made to one of the phones belonging to Darius Al-Mahdi that we've been keeping an eye on. The call came from a colonel at the mosque. Danny was right there with Darius when he called the colonel. Uncle Jaffa from the mosque was on the line. Danny worked in the Special Operations Department related to fire safety. Part of their job involved research and safety around nuclear materials. The main point of the call was that Darius's sister, Yasmin, who is Jaffa's niece, had vanished from a home belonging to someone named Jeffrey. "So, Darius, have you spoken to her lately?" Darius said he had talked to Yasmin just a week before, and she seemed really happy. She was in love and might be getting married, but Darius was still a bit worried. Jaffa reassured Darius not to stress too much if he hadn't heard from Yasmin for a while. Jaffa told Darius he needed to come to Tehran, and he would send someone to pick him up. He said Yasmin might have made a bad choice, but everything would be fine once they found her. Jaffa advised Darius not to try calling Yasmin until he could be there with him. That was about it. Both phones have GPS, and the NSA is tracking Darius's and Jaffa's locations in real time now. We believe Iran might have received some technology from Russia that can help them with tracking. They hope Yasmin is still in Tehran so they can find her easily if she answers Darius's call. I will keep you updated on Darius's location through secure text messages. Right now, getting Jennifer out is our main mission. We can focus on Darius and Yasmin later if it's safe to do so. Is that clear? Yes, ma'am. Crystal clear. I just want to work as smoothly as we can. Just be careful and make sure you keep to the main goal for now. We've also received some interesting updates from Kenneth's phone calls. He has been discussing Yasmin's disappearance with Jaffa, but Jaffa is really frustrated about not getting some special items promised to him for months. Kenneth claims that it's almost done, just waiting for his final confirmation with his main suppliers in California and Paris. Hopefully, Jennifer knows more about this, and if it has anything to do with Iran's nuclear plans, we need that information. Good luck, Jim, and stay safe. Of course. Later, I shared everything I had learned with Adele and Forehead, even about the possible nuclear issues. I knew Mossad was concerned about that as well. It made getting Jennifer back alive even more crucial. We decided to walk 1 block away, get a cab to the hotel, and check in by 8:30 p.m. to stay in touch. We would rely on our mobile phones like everyone does in Tehran and everywhere else. I was worried about the many cameras around. Adele told me not to stress about it. He had a big suitcase, while mine was just a small travel bag. We checked in and headed up to our room. We both started taking out the things we thought we might need for easy access later. Most of the bags and most of our clothes would probably stay behind. We only took the Tokarev handguns and my nice knife, but I also brought a small .22 Magnum revolver all the way from California on a flight. No waiting in long security lines. Adele had quite a few women's clothes, including shirts and even some full-body dresses for Jennifer. Smart move. After a few minutes, he found a package of clear, round, jelly-like balls. He held one in his hand and said, "Let's go for a walk to get some good coffee. We're going to have a loud argument until we reach the elevators, so just follow my lead." As we stepped out of the room and walked down the hallway, he got excited and started speaking loudly in Farsi. I did the same when we got to the spot where the ceiling camera was watching our room. He stopped me, faced me, and began to scold me, waving his arms. Then he threw the little ball, which hit the camera and broke. A clear liquid splattered over the camera lens. After that, we walked to the elevators and our argument seemed to be over. Adele smiled. Anyone paying attention to that camera would hardly notice what had just happened. The liquid on the lens wouldn't block the view much, it just looked a bit blurry. In 2 hours, that camera would barely see anything, just dark shapes, so no one would know who came in or out of our room. We went into a 24-hour cafe near the lobby and got some coffee and food. I also got an interesting message while we were finishing up. "J&D are now at your location." Jaffer and Darius were both in the hotel visiting Kenneth, possibly. "Let's check," Jennifer sighed. Things were getting more interesting since yesterday. It was now Wednesday around noon after a busy morning. I found myself in a tricky situation after being left without clothes. Kenneth had told me to take care of him right when he woke up. He left me tied up and said he would bring breakfast soon. His way of treating me had become more difficult to handle, but I had dealt with worse before. What Kenneth did was pretty mild compared to that. I managed to pretend to be struggling while also enjoying some of it. Maybe leaving me tied up was just part of his game, or maybe he was planning to pass me on to someone else sooner than I thought. It was also possible that I had done something wrong in my act, making him suspicious. It's really tough to play the part of someone not as smart as they actually are for a week or more. Those who think they are the smartest in the room often miss the small signs of intelligence in others. After some time, though, they might start to wonder. Kenneth had shared some important things with me while he worked and spoke on the phone, often while I was right beside him. I pretended that what he said or did with others didn't matter to me. I only cared that it kept him from focusing all his attention on me. This seemed to make him think I didn't mind, or maybe he just didn't care because something was happening for me that was keeping me away from returning to America. I overheard the names Yasmin and Darius during Kenneth's calls. He had brought a large supply of his favorite drinks and some pills, as his desires seemed stronger than his body could handle. We both had a long night together after we checked into the hotel on Sunday. Later on Monday, Kenneth was away for a while, leaving me alone in the hotel room. He told me not to leave the hotel because it could be dangerous for me as a foreign woman. It was also illegal for tourists to walk around without a guide. He said I could use the spa, the swimming pool, or go to the restaurants inside the hotel, or just order room service. He promised to return by early afternoon. I wandered a bit around the hotel and used the desk phone to leave a message for my team back home. Kenneth didn't come back with his bodyguard until 6 p.m. that evening, and he looked worried. I tried to ask him questions, but he didn't respond. We had a decent dinner from room service, and later we had some drinks and shared an intimate moment together. Kenneth seemed to enjoy being in control. I had noticed that it was hard for him to just be with one person. It seemed to weigh on him sometimes. I almost felt sorry for him, but it made my job of keeping him happy a bit harder. Tuesday was similar. He left soon after a quiet breakfast and warned me not to leave the room. This gave me a chance to look through his things, but I didn't find anything useful. On Tuesday evening, around 7 p.m., after another average dinner, he had his first guest. He asked me to go into the bedroom and told me to wear something nice. I slipped into some dark thigh-high stockings and high heels, then wrapped myself in a light robe and checked my reflection in the mirror. I still looked pretty good. I thought about how tall I was, 5 feet 9 inches without my shoes. I have red hair and green eyes with nice curly locks. I looked like the girl next door with a pretty face that most men would like. After about an hour, Kenneth came to get me. "How do I look?" I asked him. He smiled and said, "You look great. Just remember to keep quiet unless asked a question and follow my commands quickly and completely." He thought he was an important man, and it was important to keep that idea strong. "Are you going to share me with him?" "I kind of thought I was special to you," I said. "You are special. You're my special toy, and I don't share my toys until I'm done with them, and maybe I'll let them go, or maybe I'll break them so others can't enjoy them. But I don't mind if other boys see my toys. Now be quiet and remember what I said." He sounded commanding, but I could sense a little fear in his voice. Then he took out a small bag of white powder and sniffed some. I followed Kenneth into another room. I walked confidently because I knew how to wear high heels with my long legs. I didn't know the man standing there, but I looked at him without any strong feelings. He was just an average-looking guy, about 5 feet 10, slim, with black hair and dark eyes. He looked at me with great interest. "Well, what do you think, Colonel?" Kenneth asked. The Colonel was trying to act relaxed, but I could see in his eyes that he wanted me badly. "She is interesting, but look at how she stands. Too proud. That's not very appealing to me." "Of course, you prefer her more modestly," Kenneth said. "Come here, please, and show some respect." I did as he said, hoping to catch the Colonel's eye. He seemed reluctant to watch, especially since Kenneth was there, but he couldn't tear his gaze away from me. I could see his interest as I complied. Kenneth teased the Colonel. "This could be your moment if you have what it takes. It can be done just like I have done. See how easy it can be?" "All right, that's enough. Get up and show our guest some kindness. Just sit close to him and let him be next to you." Kenneth left while I sat beside the Colonel on the sofa and gently placed my hand on his leg. I knew he could feel my warmth. Kenneth continued, "Now, Colonel, let's put all this behind us and focus on working together toward our goals." I noticed where he was looking. "Jennifer seemed fine to you." The Colonel's hand had moved to my thigh right above my silk stockings, starting to touch gently. "Maybe this woman could be okay after I work with her for a bit. But still, you are way past the delivery dates we talked about. We have already paid you the $10 million we agreed on for these items. What's the problem?" "Unfortunately, I need to pay more money. The people I'm working with are not trustworthy. They know what's going on too, and they have figured out who the real buyers are. They believe this money is all theirs. By now, the colonel's hands were wandering, and I was lost in the moment, eyes closed. But really, I was paying close attention to the conversation, with my body reacting on its own. It's nice to be a woman who can think and feel at the same time. Unlike these two men, who shouldn't talk about these things in front of me or any other woman, my three main suppliers want another $60 million. I need more money from you, from Iran. I can't get that kind of cash myself. It's all tied up in other arms deals that are still on their way. I thought I could talk to my wife for some money before this whole Yasmin situation happened, but even though she doesn't know yet, she doesn't have that cash ready. It's stuck in investments that will take weeks to release. Plus, the money laws in the USA make it hard to move that kind of money without drawing attention, and we don't need that right now. I've just been told that some important senators are starting to question Iran's actions and are thinking about changing their support for this deal. I have my own way to handle these guys, but I need to go back to DC to sort it out in person. After that, I will head to California to finalize the high-speed switches and small neutron pulse tubes. Then, off to Paris for high-quality beryllium and equipment for shaping it. I also have a chance to get you advanced wave technology. If that works out, I will pay for it myself and give it to you. And guess what? That might actually come from Tel Aviv. You and I both know that these new plans will help create much smaller and more effective nuclear weapons that can be easily attached to missiles. They could even lead to portable nuclear weapons that could be smuggled into enemy cities. Spending $60 million is small compared to the savings we will gain for the main office needed for these weapons. Plus, think about all the chances for blackmail around the world. This setup is just the beginning. Soon, help from the UN, EU, and even the USA will be offered in large amounts to keep the Iranian situation calm. We need to think big, Jaffer. Colonel Jaffer sounded serious. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. His interest in me seemed to grow as he began to have big ideas. I decided to take a chance and try to make him happy. "You have a way with words, Kenneth," he said. "I will think about your points. But now I want some time alone with this woman before I make my final decision." I just smiled softly while Kenneth said, "Not tonight, Jaffer. Maybe tomorrow night we can finish our talks and come to a fair agreement. Take some time to think about it all day tomorrow. And remember to keep Yasmin in line." Jaffer didn't look pleased, but I started to kiss him. He finally warned me, "If you betray us, you will pay for it. Remember that. We have people all around the world who would go to great lengths to punish betrayals." He said we would talk again tomorrow evening and reach an agreement he would be satisfied with. With that, Jaffer left angrily. Kenneth still looked troubled and used some drugs, offering me some too. I agreed just to keep up appearances. Surprisingly, the time we spent together felt routine. He quickly fell asleep. I thought about making a call, but I didn't want to risk getting caught talking at that hour. That wouldn't fit my character at all. I figured he would be out again tomorrow and I could use a hotel phone, but I didn't expect to be locked up without my clothes all day Wednesday. I had no way to call anyone, but I still had my special earrings, which would allow me to call for help. Finally, around 6 p.m., Kenneth let me out and told me to get dressed. We ordered our usual dinner, and soon after, we had visitors. It was Jaffer and a younger boy who looked to be about 15 to 17 years old. Kenneth told me to wait in the bedroom. About an hour later, Kenneth came in looking relaxed. "Well, my dear, it's been nice, but all good things must come to an end. I'm passing you on to Jaffer. We've come to a good agreement on all the issues. I'm taking the boy, the colonel's nephew, out for a while. Jaffer will have some private time with you here. Then he can do as he pleases. You should treat him well. If you want a good life, you might enjoy living in Iran." I was shocked. "What do you mean?" "Sure, I'll be with him if that's what you want. But I'm going back to DC with you." He just smiled and grabbed me. "Listen, 304. You belong to him now, and that was part of my deal. I've tried to be nice about all this, but I hate giving away my toys without making them feel it first. Now I will leave my mark on you, but don't test me," he growled. Then he bit me enough to break the skin and leave a bruise. It hurt, and I couldn't help but cry out. I moved away from him, trying to show I was scared. Kenneth smiled and left, walking cheerfully. Forget him. His time will come. Maybe this was my chance to escape. I knew Jaffer was taller and heavier than me, and he was likely stronger too, even though he looked skinny. He also seemed trained in some type of fighting. I needed every advantage, and tiring him out was my first step. If I could distract him a little, I might be able to use a strong hold to hurt his right arm and shoulder. I remembered a technique that could use my full strength against his weaker arm. It was similar to what a famous fighter named Ronda Rousey did. This move showed that legs are much stronger than arms, and I believed my legs were even stronger than Jaffer's arms. So that's what I planned to do. Jaffer came after me with determination. I sensed he had some cruel sides to him that would likely grow. But that night, he just wanted to use my body for his pleasure, and I tried to help him as much as I could. After his fourth time, he fell on top of me, weakly telling me to wait a moment. I laughed and replied, "Okay, let me use the bathroom and I'll come back to you. What a friend you are." In the bathroom, I started looking for something I could use as a weapon. I needed something heavy but not too big. Kenneth had given me a large bottle of his favorite perfume. It was heavy enough, but I could hold it in one hand and hide it behind my back. After flushing, I went back to the bedroom. Jaffer was lying there with one arm over his eyes. I quietly approached him and hit him on the head with the perfume bottle. His arm partly blocked the hit, but he looked dazed. I grabbed his right wrist, pulling and twisting it, and he hardly fought back. I just dropped my weight onto his exposed elbow with my knee. With my strength and his surprise, I broke his arm and may have injured his shoulder. He let out a groan, and I easily got behind him to put him in a hold. He didn't fight back much before passing out. He already had a big bump on his head and a little blood was coming out. Luckily, Kenneth had left his handcuffs, so I cuffed Jaffer's unhurt arm to the bed frame and did my best to muffle his sounds. He was still breathing at that point. I put on my most modest clothes. I couldn't find my phone anywhere. Kenneth must have thrown it away. There was a strong chance Jaffer had security nearby in the hotel, maybe even outside the room. I checked his clothes and found a small gun. I then activated all my special emergency alerts I could find. Jaffer had a cell phone too, which I grabbed. I called my special contact number and a real person answered in English. "Yes, it's me. Do you know who I am?" "Yes, we just received your alert. Where are you?" "Still in my hotel room. I need to leave, but there might be a guard outside my room. Is help close by?" "Yes, they are very close. Caller ID shows this is Jaffer's phone. Where is he?" "He's here with me, but I have things under control at the moment. I'm borrowing his phone." "Okay, hang up, but keep it with you. More instructions will come." Now, I turned to see how Jim was doing. I was watching Adele with amazement. I had finished my disguise and felt proud of it. I looked very different, but Adele seemed to be transforming too. He had put on a burqa that covered everything except his eyes. "How do I look, honey?" he asked in a soft voice. I smiled and said, "I think I'm in love. I hate just sitting here. Want to take a little walk with your sweetheart? Maybe around the 10th floor?" "Maybe. Let me check in with the team." I gave them a call. "Where are you guys?" I asked. "The van's parked just up the street. It's easy to get to the front or back of the hotel. I'm in the lobby with Cyrus. We're not together right now, but I'm keeping an eye out for any security types. Everything seems quiet. By the way, I think Kenneth and his muscle, plus that kid Darius, left the hotel about an hour ago." "All right. Just text me if you see them coming back. We'll check things out on the 10th floor a bit. Stay alert." Could Jennifer really be completely alone right now? This could be a real chance for her to escape. I talked about this quietly with Adele as we entered the elevator. Just then, my emergency alert made my phone vibrate in a unique way. Adele jumped slightly too. Our phones were both set to silent. The message I got was simple: Jin help, along with her exact GPS location and altitude. As we stepped out of the elevator on the quiet 10th floor, I checked my GPS too. It matched perfectly. Then another tech came over. He had his phone out and showed me a local number. "It's real, let's go get her." My eyes shared the same thought with Adele. I had my small knife and a mini revolver loaded with .22 rounds. I wasn't sure what weapons Adele had or how quickly she could reach them under her burqa, but I saw the signs for rooms 1001 to 1015 and headed that way. Adele followed me quietly, just as a respectful Muslim woman would. There was a big man sitting in a chair outside room 1009. I shot him a look of annoyance as I walked by, just as a wealthy Iranian man might look at an employee who wasn't doing much. I was thinking about making my move as soon as I passed by him, especially since he was staring at Adele. But just as I was about to act, I heard a buzzing sound. I turned to see Adele zapping the big man, and he dropped to the floor, twitching before going still. I quickly called the number. "Yes? Hey, open your door. It's me." She opened the door, but her expression changed to shock. "Jim, is that you?" she asked. "Yep. Meet my new friend. She's stronger than she looks." I watched as Adele started dragging the big guy into the room by herself. "Wow, she's strong," Jennifer said, grinning. "But what about you? I'm not sure I like your new look. Give it some time," I replied with a grin, though we were still in a tough situation. Adele was giving the big man a shot. "This will keep him out for 24 hours. Anyone else here?" I asked. "Yeah, a Colonel Jaffa. Danny is tied up in the bedroom." "Jaffa? Danny? Interesting. I'll deal with him. I'll give him the same knockout shot, plus a little something extra." "Make sure to leave his phone with him," I added. "I'll need to call him in about a week when he starts feeling sick. He'll find out just how strong his beliefs are when he starts dealing with a special poison that we have the antidote for." I was glad to have Adele on my side and curious about what else she had hidden under her burqa. When she took it off, I saw she was wearing regular business clothes. She soon wrapped Jennifer up in the burqa. It fit her well, as long as she wore flat shoes. Now, how would we get out of the hotel? We walked to the elevators and caught one going down. My phone buzzed. "SEC waiting in the lobby for this elevator." As we passed the 5th floor, I pressed the button for 3. The elevator even stopped on 4, letting more people on. Adele then whispered, "Basement, fast." I got another text. I was curious about what would stop the security guards from finding us in the basement. As we walked out of the stairwell, I figured they must be in touch with the camera team watching everything. Darn cameras. It turned out our escape was thanks to Ford and Cyrus. They stopped the hotel security guards who only saw us use the taser on one guy. They were confused about what was happening and hadn't even called for help yet. Ford guided us right outside through a basement door and into a waiting van, and we quickly drove away. Jennifer used my phone to call Elaine and told her everything she could remember. The rest of the trip to the border went pretty well. We had made a stop at the safe house to reload our weapons before heading out again. 2 of us rode in a pickup truck while the rest squeezed into the van. It was a good thing we sedated Jaffer. Kenneth was very suspicious to others and insisted he was completely innocent about what had happened to Jaffer and his guard. He did say there was an American woman in the room with Jaffer when he went to take Darius out for dinner. Darius could confirm he saw a woman dressed in Western clothes, but only for a moment. They didn't even realize we had left our room on the 5th floor without checking out until much later in the day. That camera cover-up really worked well. Adele would definitely need a new ID if he ever went back to Iran. Via finally decided to seal the border for 2 days and increased patrols in the remote areas, especially near Iraq. Lieutenant Bill noticed a patrol that found fresh tire tracks on an old, rough path. Since we had used that path, the patrol decided to set up an ambush and wait. When the person who spotted the Iranian patrol saw our vehicles coming back the same way, he took action. I got a call from him saying, "There's some debris in the road ahead. I suggest you stop and wait a bit until it's cleared." "How long?" I asked. "Not long. I'll let you know." We had just turned onto a dirt road and it was a tense moment. Soon after, we heard distant explosions. Another call came through. "Okay, you can go ahead. It's clear. Don't hang around. We'll keep an eye on you." He had sent in helicopters to deal with the ambush. He might not have gotten all of them, but he certainly eliminated the immediate threat and cleared the road. Eventually, the van got stuck, so we all piled into a small 4-wheel drive pickup truck to go over the hill and down into Iraq, hopefully to safety. As we passed the area where the action had happened, we could smell the gunpowder. I didn't look for any bodies. Bill, Pete, and his team met us as soon as we crossed the border without any trouble. They were in Humvees and escorted us inside. I introduced Jennifer to them. "Here she is, everyone. Our mission went perfectly. This was our important goal. She really is important." Jennifer smiled wide and thanked them a lot for their help. They even turned a bit red before she finished. Jennifer had that effect on nice people. I also thanked them, but I couldn't help saying, "Wow, I hope you didn't start any trouble back there." Bill and Pete both laughed. "No worries. It will just be seen as another mix-up at the border when someone accidentally crossed over. That happens a lot, especially near Iraq and Iran. Iran's support for some groups keeps the tension alive. They believe they will take over Iraq eventually, so they don't want to start a big fight now. Iran has bigger issues to deal with right now. We're just trying to slow that down, and getting Jennifer out helped a lot. Trust me on that. We have your travel plans all set. A plane is waiting to take you and Jennifer back home soon. What about you two? Oh, we'll stay here for a bit. There's no place like this for fun. Jen and I said our goodbyes to everyone. Jen hugged and kissed them on the cheek. Those small things matter a lot. Believe me, ask anyone who puts their life at risk far from home. The C-130 took us only to RAF Lakenheath in England. The U.S. Air Force mostly runs that base, and the great news for Jen and me was a C-21 waiting for us there. That was a U.S. Air Force plane that could comfortably carry 6 people at almost 500 miles per hour. It could go more than 3,000 miles before needing fuel. We would be much more comfortable flying across the Atlantic and might get some rest to shake off our nerves and tiredness. There was ample space since we were the only passengers, though a U.S. Air Force corporal was on board to assist. Our seats reclined, and Jen was right next to me. She soon fell asleep. I was tired too, but still awake, thinking about how lucky we had been so far. My thoughts drifted to Kenneth and the challenges he still posed to our country, and how he had affected me personally and my marriage to Cathy. He often caused trouble without a care in the world. That made me think about Cathy. I had been busy and hadn't thought about her much the past few days. Now, with some quiet time, she was on my mind. I missed her so much, but I couldn't see a way to bring us back together, to be in love again, happy and content. I always believed we were that way with each other. Maybe I was mistaken about that. Sometimes, looking back doesn't help at all. I couldn't see how I could have done things differently now. I really needed to talk to Cathy, but I wondered if she would tell me the truth. Would I be able to tell her the whole truth in return? My thoughts started to slow down, and I began to feel drowsy. Then Jen stirred and made a noise in her sleep, as if she was having a bad dream. I put my arm under her, resting her head on my shoulder. I held her close and gently rocked her until she calmed down and started breathing normally again. I had no clue what she went through over the past 5 days, but I guessed it was much harder than what I experienced. I just hoped and prayed she wasn't too hurt by it all. It was a shame. She was living a tough life, doing a hard job that asked a lot from her, risking her health and safety, with only an uncertain future to think about. Cathy had a comfortable life, with few sacrifices, nothing really dangerous, and bright days ahead of her. Yet for some reason, that was not enough for her. It was hard not to feel bitter when thinking about how different we were, even if I tried to put my own feelings aside. Despite all of this, I was still in love with Cathy more than Jen. I cared for and respected Jen in many ways, but my heart was still with my spoiled and unfaithful wife. Life can be tough sometimes, but it was time to face Cathy, and we still had to deal with our other issues. Kenneth Turner III. Now let's check in on Cathy. Here we were, another Saturday, another weekend with nothing planned. I had no work events or social plans. Most of my friends were either married with families or in serious relationships. I was separated from my husband and my boyfriend, Kenneth Turner III. What a joke that was. I hadn't heard from Kenneth all week, and I wasn't about to reach out to him. I didn't think I wanted to see him again, either socially or for work. I was trying to figure out a way to pull away from that part of my life without quitting my job. But if I had to quit, I might just go back to Chicago and run to my dad. Maybe Jim would come with me if I did that. Why was I even thinking about this? I hadn't heard from Jim either, but that was understandable after that last message I got from him. He had to be back this weekend sometime. I really needed to talk to him. He was so distant when he left me. I knew he suspected I was seeing Kenneth, but he had been asking to get back together since then. But did he really mean that? Dr. Ruth told me about feelings that were all tangled up like a game. She said he said, and I started to feel like I didn't really know Jim anymore. Maybe I never really knew him at all. Could that be true? Did the 4 or 5 years we spent together being in love really happen? Was it real? And how did I go from being happy with Jim, my husband, to feeling so unhappy that I wanted to try something new? Then there was Kenneth. As I got to know him better, I saw that he wasn't a nice person at all, despite his success and looks. Yes, he had charm and a lot of ambition, but deep down, he was just selfish and alone. His sadness was hard to ignore. No wonder he relied on drugs to feel good. I never felt the need for those things with Jim. Even in the last 2 years, even when we seemed to drift apart, I never felt alone or sad when I was with him. My true unhappiness hit me when I was away. I realized this at work, spending more time away from him, trying to just take things easy. Maybe I would call Dr. Ruth later and talk about these feelings. Around 1 o'clock, I got bored and decided to go to the mall for a while. I wanted to grab something to eat and do a little shopping. I had just finished my meal and was walking out when 2 men in plain suits approached me. "Mrs. Richardson?" one asked. "I'm Agent Hayden, and this is Agent Monroe." They showed me their FBI badges. "We need to talk to you about something important. Please come with us." "What's this about? Am I being investigated?" "You know I'm a lawyer, right?" I replied. "Don't worry. All your questions will be answered by my superior," said Agent Hayden. "We only have some basic information and we think this won't take long. You'll be back here or to wherever you want to go afterward. Please cooperate. It will help you." My heart raced a little, but what else was I doing? I was bored, so maybe this would be interesting. They drove me to a well-known FBI building in their government car. Once inside, I was taken to a conference room. "It'll just be a minute. Can I get you something to drink?" Agent Hayden asked. "Coffee would be great," I said. "Double cream, please." He returned quickly with my coffee. Soon after, a young woman with blonde hair entered, holding a folder. She nodded at the agents, who then left the room. "Mrs. Richardson," she said. "I'm Elaine Bennett, and I work with the Department of Homeland Security. I'm here with the FBI to discuss some important matters related to national security." Wow, that was a lot of confusing talk. I have to say, as a lawyer, I appreciate it. I gave her a little smile. She smiled back, but we quickly moved past small talk. "How's your marriage, Cathy?" she asked. That was a strange question. Why would she care about my marriage? The truth is, I didn't want to discuss it. "No, I'm not talking about my marriage. That's my personal business." Let me guess. Are we talking about what consenting adults do in their own lives? Their private time? Shouldn't that be no one's business but their own? I felt uneasy. What did she know? "My marriage is fine, thank you for asking." Okay, but what if those adults are married to other people who don't know? Isn't that still a private matter? And why should the state worry about supporting marriages? Do you know that kids from stable homes do much better than those from broken families? Kids from single-parent homes are much more likely to get into trouble than those from happy families. I posed the question, but shifted the conversation back to her. "Your husband, Jim, doesn't seem to think your marriage is fine. He's not living with you anymore and is seeing a counselor about his worries. Have you spoken to a counselor yourself?" I felt my face flush. "I'm not discussing my marriage with you. If that's all you want to know, then I'm leaving. And I don't have kids." Elaine smiled and returned to her notes. "Do you know Kenneth Turner?" The mood got a bit serious. "Yes, I do. He's my client. I'm his lawyer. Is that the only way you know him?" Before I could reply, she reminded me, "Lying to an official in a criminal matter is against the law." "Yes, we've become friends and we hang out sometimes, like dinner and charity events. Just that." "Friends with benefits?" she pressed. I took a breath, but she looked away and called out, "Send Flynn in." Flynn entered and I suddenly felt nervous. "Hello, Cathy," he said with a sad smile. "You work for her. You were using me, weren't you?" I felt violated, angry, and scared all at once. "What did Cathy tell you, Flynn? About the night she spent with you?" Ellen asked. She shared her complicated feelings about her relationship with Kenneth. She talked about how confused she felt now and the guilt she carried. She also thought about how her actions affected her husband. "You all are unbelievable. You find pleasure in watching others in private moments. What were you thinking, Cathy? You picked a very bad person to have an affair with. Kenneth is a threat to our country. He is working hard to fill his own pockets and could cause serious harm to many people here. We can't let that happen. Cathy, do you want this to go on?" "Of course not. But how do I know you're not just making things up?" "I've worked closely with Kenneth. If you're talking about his work with the Iran nuclear talks, then all I've seen from him is legal and even good. He wants world peace and to keep Americans safe through negotiation, nothing more than regular lobbying." You've never heard Kenneth say he wanted to help Iran make nuclear weapons? No, just the opposite. The treaty prevents that, doesn't it? Actually, the treaty is vague and can be interpreted in different ways. If Iran follows the treaty as it seems to be written, it just slows down their nuclear program. But our intelligence shows that Iran isn't really slowing down at all. We're all worried about this. Would you be willing to help us look into Kenneth's actions and thoughts? Spy for you? You must be kidding. I'm his lawyer. I would break lawyer-client confidentiality and ethics. I could lose my job. I'm serious. We would protect you. So your professional responsibility matters more to you than your marriage vows? What about the ethics of being close to your clients? It seems your ideas about ethics can change easily. If you refuse to help us willingly, you could end up in serious trouble yourself. I'm serious, and I can make your life very difficult. You all are out of your minds. I'm just doing my job, and it's a legally protected job. It's very important. And you want to ignore Kenneth's rights and my rights for your own reasons, hidden under the guise of patriotism. What are you really after? A boost for your career? Bringing down a billionaire just because he's wealthy seems silly to me. It sounds like a wild conspiracy from some right-wing group. It feels like an attack on a liberal democratic government that is trying to promote peace through talks, rather than just going to war. I refuse to help anyone who just makes these claims without providing any real proof. I'm ready to speak out publicly. This whole investigation might not even be legal, and I know some smart senators who would be interested in looking into this abuse of power. This is crazy. I felt confident that I was doing the right thing. My anger made me feel strong. Those office workers really got under my skin. Elaine shook her head at me and said to bring in the rest of the team. Just then, a tall and striking redhead entered the room. Wait a minute. I recognized her. It was Jennifer, the woman Kenneth and I had shared a moment with before. What was happening? And right behind her was my husband. My heart sank. One moment I felt so righteous, and the next I was overwhelmed with fear and shame. Had Jennifer told Jim everything? Tears filled my eyes. Don't cry. Stay cool, I told myself. Jim, what are you doing here? I asked. Hello, Cathy, he replied in a calm tone. This was part of his game, like Dr. Ruth said. His calmness made me uneasy as my mind raced with questions. Did I feel trapped? Jim works for me, Cathy, Elaine said. It felt like my life was falling apart, even worse than the mess I had made myself. Don't trust them, Jim. They will mix facts with lies for their own gain. They have already tried to blackmail me. I've made mistakes, and I'll tell you everything myself. Just don't believe their twisted story. Everyone looked at me as tears began to stream down my face. I sensed that Jennifer wanted to comfort me, but nobody else did, especially Jim. Jim, how long have you worked for me or the agency? Elaine asked. Since I was a freshman at Notre Dame, he said. I didn't react. It just didn't register in my mind. Elaine continued, Where have you been this past week? I was in California for work, then flew with the Air Force to Iraq and spent a couple of days in Tehran helping get Jennifer away from Kenneth. My jaw dropped, and the tears stopped. Was this some kind of strange dream? Elaine then turned to Jennifer and asked about the night Kenneth and I were together last Friday. You remember last Friday night, don't you, Cathy? I was watching Jim. Jim looked pained as Jennifer bluntly mentioned my cheating. I could only blush and look down. Jim knew everything. No doubt about it now. My marriage was over. Maybe my job too. For the first time, I thought it might be my life too. How dangerous was Jim? How much did he hate me now? Jennifer went on to say that Kenneth had some work with an Iranian official named Colonel Jaffer. Danny and I were caught up in this somehow. Kenneth had given me to the colonel, but I managed to escape with Jim's help. We learned the basics of Kenneth's work. He was trying to get some high-tech devices for advanced, small nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, I couldn't take notes on this since I was in a difficult situation overhearing the details. Do you really think I am lying? That was the question Jennifer asked directly to me. There was silence for a minute. Then I quietly asked if I could have some time alone with my husband. Please, Jim, I said. Elaine got up and nodded. Everyone left the room and Jim and I were alone. Why, Jim? Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked. Jim sighed and said, I was always working undercover. It was mostly to protect you and our families. It was also about who keeps an eye on those in charge. I never spied on other U.S. agents, but I did some checking on my own. It was because our regular agencies were not working well anymore. He continued, I, along with a few others, can act without the limitations that many government agencies have now. Our findings have often been concerning. Take the Iran negotiations, for example. The truth is not how they present it to the public. He went on, whether Iran will actually use a nuclear weapon is still unclear, but they are working hard to develop it. They would probably use it for threats, much more than Pakistan does. Iran's leaders seem to have their sights on Israel or even the USA, all while trying to blame it on terrorist groups. Right now, Iran is playing a dangerous game, helping some enemies while setting themselves up for attack. It could end badly for Iraq and Syria too. What's left of us now that Kenneth is deeply involved in all of this? It's true. Can you really feel okay about yourself if you don't assist? And everything goes wrong. The worst-case scenario, like a dangerous explosion in a big city, or even a missile attack on an important place. I just don't know who or what to believe anymore. Who are you really? Did you ever care for me, or was I just part of some secret plan? I loved you. I still do. I know I wasn't fair to you. I had another life that I kept hidden, but I loved you. I never cheated on you. I just thought about finding someone I thought was better. I thought I was a decent husband overall. Everyone has their work life a little separated from their family life. You had your secrets. I never wanted to leave our marriage, but it seems like you did. I wish I could understand why. Why did you stop loving me and start wanting someone else? Maybe you played your role a little too well. You went from being exciting to being pretty ordinary very fast. You became so predictable and dull. You even stopped practicing martial arts, which used to be your hobby. You kept your cleverness hidden. We both stopped going to our religious gatherings and stopped talking about what we used to. Those conversations used to be enjoyable because we never argued. We just understood each other's beliefs. The lessons we learned from both our faiths were about loving and respecting the same true God. You changed into someone I hardly recognize anymore. I admit I didn't see it at first. It was hidden by our move to a new city and my own job change. But now it all makes sense. You wanted to live a life without any excitement. It's sad how well you succeeded. But that included me too. I even lost interest in you. Good job, I thought bitterly. At least you looked a little embarrassed. You were right. I didn't think it all the way through. I'm sorry. I promise I will be here for you after we finish this, answering your questions about me and our relationship. I can offer you a peaceful divorce if that's what you want. I and the agency can help you get your life back together if you help us now. But you're really caught up in this now. And my team is serious. We can make things very difficult for you if you refuse to help us. It's that important. Maybe you feel like you can't trust me anymore. I get it completely. I feel let down by you too, if not more. I can't fully trust your words or decisions either. We both made mistakes, and we're in a tough spot. I'm asking you to help yourself by helping us. Do you really want me to do this? You're basically sending me back to be mistreated by that guy. That's what you want, even if I don't want to. Do you enjoy having that kind of power? I don't want to be like him. Forget you, Cathy. You chose this path and jumped in without thinking. Too bad it's not all good after all. I will feel better when that guy pays for what he did. And he will, one way or another. I'm trying to keep you from getting hurt too, but sometimes I wonder why I should care. I lost your love, but it was a mistake, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. You never said anything to me. I just started looking for someone new. Well, you found him, and now you have to live with him for a while. Jim got up and walked out of the room, and I was upset too. I hurried after him because he wasn't going to get the last word, but then Jennifer came in. After Jim left, she smiled and said, "Sit down, Cathy. Everyone will be back soon, even Jim. You really hurt him. Do you know that? Do you care? You know him well, don't you? I'm pretty close to him. He just saved my life from a terrible fate." Your friend Kenneth laughed when he gave me away. You left Jim for Kenneth. How foolish can you be? I never meant to hurt Jim. I just didn't want him to find out, even if I did end things with him. It just drove me crazy that he became so distant. Was he distant when he was with you? Being with you? He never seemed distant to me in that moment. Yes, I've been close with Jim too, and I've also been with Kenneth, but there's no comparison between them. It's not even close. Stop reminding me of my mistakes. I know what I've done. Okay, he wants me to go back to Kenneth. He doesn't love me or want me anymore anyway. He's probably interested in you now. Is he? Is that what's happening? I felt so jealous at that moment, realizing Jim might like you. Calm down. I love Jim, and I have for a long time, even before he met you. We had a little summer romance. But I'm not in love with him, and he doesn't feel that way toward me, at least not now. He just told me a few days ago that he still loves you, but you hurt him, and you might lose him completely. Your only chance is to help Jim with his work. That's the truth. He's angry with you. He doesn't want to be close to Kenneth or anyone else, including me. But you've already done that. Now his work has to come first. Get it together, girl, and think carefully about what you really want and how you might still get there, I told myself. Jennifer stood up and left me alone. Maybe everyone else was listening to us in here, but at least I had some feeling of privacy. They just showed me how much control they had over my life. Flynn was part of their plan, and Jennifer had been working with Kenneth for about a year. Dr. Ruth? She could be part of it too. I wondered who else in my own office could be in on this. Which secretary or legal assistant? Maybe some of our friends? I had no idea. Jim, for all the time I've known him, seemed to be part of it too. I felt so clueless, just in the dark, but people did care about me. Soon, everyone came back in and sat down. It was decision time. I didn't really have a choice, did I? So of course I said I would help them. Even if Kenneth was involved in wrong actions, I would just be making sure that both Iran and America followed the rules of the agreement. I'll find out the truth and report back to you however you want, Elaine said nicely. Good, thank you. Here's the plan, Jim. You'll move back home. Cathy will just update you every night or whenever she gets back. Kenneth probably won't even notice. Right, Cathy? As long as I don't use it as an excuse not to be with him when he wants me, I replied. I haven't heard from him in a week. I'm not sure if he's still interested in me like that. He had a tough trip to Iran. Things didn't go as planned. We'll let you know when he's back. Maybe you should call him if you don't hear from him first. It's really up to you to handle that part of your relationship. You've been doing well. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't start asking too many questions. Keep your eyes and ears open. Remember all the little details. Everyone he talks to, his travel plans, everything. It's the little things that can lead to something big. Try to be friendly with his staff and assistants. Just have casual conversations, but take your time. Jim can help guide you, and so can Dr. Ruth. Elaine smiled, but Jim didn't. Okay, Cathy, you can leave now. The FBI will take you wherever. I almost pleaded, I'll move back in tomorrow, around midday. Then we can talk and get to work. Do some careful thinking until then, Cathy. Be careful. He said this in a calm tone. Did he still care? Did I care if he cared? Of course I did. This felt worse than junior high school, and Jim was harder to ignore than ever. Visible. Oh no, now let's check on Jim's side. Cathy left, and the meeting ended. Jennifer was going to spend some time with Dr. Ruth to help with any stress from last week and other times before that. Elaine pulled me aside and we went to her office. She was watching me closely. Can you manage moving back in with her? Yeah, I can handle it, I said, sounding a bit grumpy. Elaine laughed, but then got serious. Listen to yourself. This is where it really matters. You need to be there for Cathy. This might mean being close to her and still showing her you care. Normally, this would just be acting, but I know you still care for her and feel upset with her at the same time. That makes it much harder. Do you remember those talks about relationships back when we started? What role does the guy play for those women? I felt sick, and I'm sure my face showed it. He helps them feel close, giving them true moments of joy, and they feel a bond with him. How crazy is that? I almost fell apart. I want you to talk to Dr. Ruth after Jennifer is done. Spend at least an hour with her. Listen, this is important. In the meantime, go to your office and start reading. The NSA is keeping a close watch on that big hotel where Kenneth is right now. The computers are recording all messages and checking them carefully. They will find anything interesting for further review. Take a look at that. We've also started looking into California companies that handle those switches, starting with Milco International Incorporated, the company that once shipped them to Israel in the past. Many people could be involved, from cleaners to mailroom workers to top managers. Someone could have been tricked or blackmailed. Maybe someone's spouse was led astray, and then that person was promised the wealth needed to cause trouble but just wanted to live a good life. We'll need some luck to find anything this way. We're just doing basic checks for now. Hopefully, Kenneth will name someone in his messages, or maybe Cathy will notice something. Train her and help her out, Jim. You know what's important here. Once you've got her settled and working well, we can send your double in to stay with her and take her reports. If you need to go anywhere, you must make at least one visit to see Farah Turner again. You'll need to tell her about her kids. It's also important to help her start the divorce process right away. It is essential to stop Kenneth from getting access to her money, especially after he tries to ask her to send a large sum to someone. I think that might happen with the CRI-Tron deal, regardless of the extra money the Iranians gave him. He will likely want to keep as much money as he can and use other people's money if he can. However, if nothing comes up, we can trap or press someone for information. If Kenneth seems to be doing well, we might just have to take action against him. I can picture a night when an F-22 might target his private jet high in the sky. Those specialized missiles are designed to leave no sign of being made in the USA after they explode. That image was a strange comfort as I left Elaine's office. As always, she was right about everything, especially related to my own troubled feelings. Just thinking about getting close to Cathy made my stomach turn. But I was a professional, right? Did I really need to feel a personal connection to get important work done? Wasn't I supposed to be the strong spy? Didn't I always have that confident attitude like James Bond? Well, Elaine was right. It was time to be real. I was just an ordinary man after all. I needed to focus on my job and deal with my weakest point, my wife. Like many men who love their wives deeply, I knew that even if I hadn't realized it before. Frustration filled me, but I had to check on Cathy's side. Somehow, I made it back to my condo. It didn't even feel like home anymore. I guess I was in shock. It was worse than feeling unreal. Never did I think that a little secret love would lead me here. Jim was a spy. Kenneth was a bad man with lots of money. I felt lost in the middle. Deep down, I knew that my imagined new life with Kenneth was simply a dream. I had always thought Jim would remain my loving husband, always there at night. Somehow, I had imagined Jim wouldn't notice or care. After all, he seemed distant to me, except for when he was there with me. Who knows how long I could have lived in this nice dream if Kenneth hadn't shown his true self? After all, that experience crushed my dreams and made me believe the stories Jim's friends told. I was done with thinking of Kenneth as a dream. But now, I had to face him in real life. How could I do this? And would Jim ever care for me again? I felt that loss more than ever right now. How did I end up here? I grew up as a JP, a Jewish American princess, especially in my father's eyes. He always treated me like I was the most precious and beautiful thing in his life. I know that spoiled me, but it also gave me confidence with other boys and later with men. I never needed to seek attention or be the focus of a crowd. I didn't need boys to tell me I was pretty. All I had to do was look in the mirror and see the love and pride in my father's eyes. His feelings for me were genuine, and I loved him just as much. How could I have hurt him to be with Jim? I should have figured things out better before. I should have made Jim see that. My family and I were just the right amount of religious. We were part of the Reform community, not Orthodox. We didn't always say our prayers 3 times a day and only sometimes went to synagogue on Friday nights or Saturday mornings, usually just one of those. Our family heritage was Sephardi. Our ancestors came to the New World after leaving Spain in 1492, the same year Columbus discovered America. It's not clear, but some of my ancestors likely traveled in Europe before arriving here. My father was very interested in our family history and Jewish history around the world. He even took one of those popular genetic tests to learn more about our roots. It was almost a waste since it didn't reveal anything he didn't already know. Of course, there were some non-Jewish genes in the mix, but the idea of anyone having purely Jewish blood in Europe for the last 2,000 years is silly. Jews, Celts, Germans, Romans, Greeks, Slavs, Gypsies, Mongols, Huns, Arabs, and even Africans have all mixed together over time, sometimes by force, but often through love and marriage. People are drawn to one another. My father also taught me to love the USA. For most Jews who've lived here since the 1500s, this truly felt like our promised land. We were treated more fairly here than almost anywhere else. Even now, more Jews live in the USA than in any other country besides Israel. Overall, Jews tend to be more successful in life here than in any other place except Israel. Jewish people have held many important government positions in the United States, from Joe Lieberman to Henry Kissinger to Judah Benjamin, who was Secretary of War and Secretary of State for the Confederate States during the 1860s. Although there have been moments of anti-Semitism in America, they were not as severe as the terrible events that happened to Jews in Europe and Asia. The Holocaust and the suffering caused by scientific racism were not part of American history in the same way. Eugenics, a belief that some people are naturally better than others, was taught in schools until the 1960s. This certainly added to feelings of prejudice against Jewish people. If false science claims that certain groups are inferior, how can educated people ignore it? I have always felt a bit cautious about science, especially when it gets too much praise, since learning about this history. I am proud to be Jewish and to have a rich family history, and I am also proud to be American. Growing up, I never thought I would marry a Catholic boy. It wasn't about prejudice, it was just how I saw my future. But then I met Jimmy Richardson, and it felt normal. It didn't seem like a big deal. Jim kept coming around. At first, he was dating my friend Sarah, and she was very happy with him. She couldn't stop talking about how strong he was. He won martial arts competitions and was on the Notre Dame fencing team, beating many skilled athletes who had been training for years. He had just started the sport but was doing wonderfully. On top of that, he was smart, especially with languages. He surprised me with his knowledge of history and religion. He could discuss religion in an interesting way, making it engaging and relevant. As I got to know him better, I started to think about his views on religion. I had assumed he would feel superior as a Catholic, but I was wrong. He was respectful and knowledgeable about Judaism. He understood the basics of my faith, especially its history, and he even knew about my family's traditions. He even shyly told me he was teaching himself Hebrew. I thought that was great. I knew a little Hebrew, but he picked it up faster than I did. I never flirted with him, and he never flirted with me. But somehow he made Sarah really upset. No, it wasn't because he was seeing someone else. Sarah just ended things with him. He was heartbroken. I never found out what he did, but Jim kept saying he was really sorry and tried to apologize many times. But Sarah refused to talk to him. I tried my best to stay friends with both of them. Just friends. One night I had a bit more to drink than usual while hanging out with Jim. He seemed better, but he had also been drinking. Then, out of nowhere, he kissed me. It felt electric. My whole body reacted. The kiss took me by surprise. Somehow the night ended, and we went home alone. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. It felt silly. I didn't have romantic feelings for Jim. I admired him for his brains and thought of him as someone who needed a friend. Yet again, something happened. It didn't seem planned. We never really went on a date. We just met up casually when we both happened to be at the same place. About 2 weeks after that kiss, we ended up being very close for the first time. I felt like I was the center of Jim's world. He made me feel special all night. I had never spent a full night with anyone like that before, but I didn't want the night to end. It was like everything was out of my control. I was close to finishing my law degree, and Jim became a big distraction. It felt easier to just accept Jim as my partner. That helped me relax and focus on my studies again. It worked. I felt calm, focused, and happier than ever. Soon, I couldn't imagine my life without Jim. I guess that's what love is. It makes you feel deeply connected to someone. I even put my family, especially my dad, and some of my beliefs aside to be with Jim, who I wanted to be with more than anything. He made it so easy for me. He never pushed me to choose. We just made decisions together, and it felt right. Jim got a job in Washington, and I had my degree, so finding work there was simple. Life was good and comfortable. We were close almost every night, except for the few weeks each year when Jim had to travel for work during those first 2 years. My job was getting better, which meant I had to travel more often. As time went on, Jim started to feel distant, and I just let it happen without saying anything. Now, I had many questions for Jim. I needed him to be honest. I tried to be angry and act like I was better than him, but mostly, I just felt helpless and sad. I didn't like how I looked anymore. When I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw my father's eyes. I couldn't even bear to look at myself. The truth was, regardless of what Jim had done or not done, I didn't have a good reason for my own actions with Kenneth. I felt like I had become someone unworthy. Jim knew this and seemed to push me into that role. It felt like he just tossed me aside. I needed a drink and a good cry, so I spent the night drinking and crying, hoping it would be the last time. I thought about the strong women from the stories of my faith, like Esther and Ruth. I realized I needed to reconnect with what mattered to me and couldn't keep pushing God away, or my family, or my country. I prayed that Jim was honest about Kenneth. If he was trying to harm what I held dear, I would do everything I could to find out and stop him. Great women in history had fought for good against evil, and I was ready to do what it took to make things right. Maybe even to restore my relationship with Jim as my partner and husband. But that felt so far away, especially since I was in a difficult situation that I didn't even fully understand. I wanted to help my husband, even if it meant taking action against Kenneth. I now believed that Jim and his friends were probably telling me the truth. My life felt different in ways I never expected, especially as I tried to rebuild my professional ties with Kenneth. Worrying about Jim and whether he could forgive me for what I had done was hard. I didn't want to be in this position, but it felt like I had no choice. I was scared Kenneth might not want me around anymore, especially in a work sense. I prayed a lot for help and strength. Every day was filled with worry. I felt like I was losing control of my life in ways that could be really serious. Unfortunately, many people who cheat find themselves in tough situations. It seemed simple, but too many bad things happen because of choices made in such moments. Even now, in our modern world, Elaine reminded me of the lessons from my Jewish faith about family and morality. Family is so important. Marriage plays an important role in families. It creates a safe place for children to grow up and learn. Even though Jim never practiced Judaism, our children would still be seen as Jewish, and I believe he would be a wonderful father. After he left his job, I wondered if that was why Jim never mentioned starting a family. My reasons were more about myself. I was focused on my career and chasing my own desires, often getting lost in my ambitions. The rule about staying faithful seemed like simple common sense. Being faithful helped keep marriages strong and made it possible to raise kids in a happy home. But now I had made a mistake, and my marriage was falling apart. I felt like I had no options left. I needed to follow the examples of strong women from the past and do everything I could to honor my values, protect my marriage, and care for my community. My community wasn't just Jim and our family, it included everyone around me. I hoped I would have understood this important lesson even if Jim wasn't such a great person. Despite being blind to some things in our relationship, he meant so much to me, and that made me want to fight for our marriage. But it also made me anxious about the pain I would feel if I failed. I worried that Jim might leave me again if I couldn't help him, and it seemed like even Kenneth didn't want me anymore. I felt like I needed someone else to show interest in me to stay close to Jim, who was now also my boss. It felt complicated and unfair. I decided to call Kenneth when I heard he was back in town. He returned from his trip on Tuesday, and I finally reached out on Wednesday around 5 p.m. I was surprised when he answered the phone. At first, Kenneth was very cold, and things seemed bleak. After talking to Jim and Dr. Ruth about different ideas, I suggested not only being with Kenneth, but also inviting one of my college friends, Elaine. She was visiting and had a wild side that made her appealing for a fun evening together. Elaine was skilled in being social, and I learned a lot by watching her. However, for me, the situation felt even more difficult than before. Kenneth noticed this change and seemed to enjoy it. Elaine was supposed to tell Jim everything I did with Kenneth and what they both did to me. It was really stressful thinking about it. This made Kenneth and me closer again, but things were different. Kenneth seemed worn out and stressed. It felt like he kept me around because it was easy for him. He didn't bring any other girls home, almost as if he didn't care. I was different too, but I tried to hide my fear and sadness. Right now, I was inside Kenneth's private jet, a fancy Boeing 707 that used to belong to famous people. I was on my knees trying to please him while we flew somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean on our way to Paris. Later, I found out that 2 stealth fighter jets were following us during our entire flight. They didn't have their tracking systems on or let anyone know they were there. They were getting information from a special plane that helps with radar. Funny enough, this plane was also a modified Boeing 707. We were in a dangerous situation where someone could give the command to shoot us down without warning. Jim and Alan weren't part of this decision. It was up to someone named Rob and maybe even somebody higher up. Then the leading plane received a short command. A short time later, both jets were told to return to base and our shadow aircraft disappeared. It turned out all of this was just for training. There was a chance one of the planes tested their missile systems, but then they got a strong lock on our jet. The pilots reported everything was ready to fire their weapon. Luckily, the missile was stopped and put away just in time. The tracking signal that pointed to our location vanished as quickly as it appeared. For just a few moments, we were in real danger. It was only training, though, kind of like someone pretending to threaten you just to show how it works. Jim probably told me all this later because he was still upset with me. He may have exaggerated to make me understand how crucial it was to stop Kenneth, or maybe it really happened. Thankfully, I wasn't aware of any of this while I tried to keep Kenneth happy, thinking it was important. Funny enough, the more I acted submissive, the more control I seemed to have over Kenneth. I was learning a lot about him, which gave me some power. It felt like the universe was balancing things out without needing any mystical forces, just human nature at work. It seemed that power not only corrupts, but can also make someone foolish. Kenneth felt more powerful, but he was also using more drugs and needing my attention more than ever. Oddly enough, he looked relaxed and happy, as if everything was going well for him. The start of our trip to Los Angeles seemed to be very good for him in his work. We stayed at a fancy place, a 5-star hotel at Pelican Beach in Newport Beach, which was away from the busy areas of downtown LA and Hollywood. It felt like Kenneth wanted to be low-key. Only his money guy, Edgar, was with us, and I noticed Kenneth always had his laptop with him. There were also 2 large security guards around him, and sometimes he would joke with them while behaving inappropriately toward me. They tried to keep a serious look, which made me feel embarrassed for them, so I tried to act friendly. Jim and Dr. Ruth had told me to do that, but it all felt very strange. I wasn't sure how much the guards knew about Kenneth's work, but since they were always with him, they probably had some idea of where he went. I was hoping to learn more from them without making them suspicious. Kenneth was on his phone a lot during our time in California and disappeared for most of 2 days. I had the chance to use the spa or shop while he was away. He would call me on my cell when he was coming back, and I had to be there when he arrived. Kenneth didn't need me for any work-related stuff. He just wanted my company at night. Those times were short now, and it was easy to just focus on being what he wanted. I didn't even have to pretend much, as he didn't seem to need much reassurance for his ego. What he liked was seeing me feel used and controlled, and I didn't have to pretend that. Every little detail I learned, I shared with Jim during our daily phone calls. It was a good cover. He was still my husband, and I had told Kenneth that I was still in touch with him. I knew Jim wouldn't just disappear, so I felt I had to deal with it for now. Kenneth just laughed it off and didn't seem worried at all. Jim's cover was solid. 1 or 2 phone calls a day felt normal. Sometimes Jim would call around 8 p.m. when Kenneth would be nearby, and we would just argue lightly. Often, Kenneth would scowl and tell me to take the call somewhere else. Sometimes he would smirk and tease me while I was talking to Jim, where I would sigh and roll my eyes, saying, "Yes, Jim, I still love you." I just needed some time and space right now, so I had to smile back at Kenneth and pretend I was fine with how things were. Can you imagine how I felt? I was really worried. What was Jim thinking about all this? I was more afraid of him not caring than anything else. Please just keep being upset with me or even hating me for now, I kept wishing. I felt like I would need help for a long time after all of this. If it ever ended, I hoped both Jim and I would need counseling too. That would at least give me a chance. As we boarded the flight back to Washington, D.C., I noticed some big, hard-sided suitcases being loaded onto the plane. They looked expensive and could hold anything from weapons to electronics. We were only staying in D.C. for 1 night, and Kenneth insisted I stay with him. Then, we would fly straight to Paris the next morning. His airplane could easily make that trip with enough fuel. I overheard Kenneth talking about something related to Saturday Night Live and a new product. It didn't make much sense to me, but I told Jim about it when Kenneth wasn't around. Sometimes during those private phone calls, I would whisper, "I love you." Jim never replied, but he also never told me to stop saying that. That gave me hope. Jim didn't seem excited about my trip to Paris. It felt like he wanted to pull me back, but he finally sighed and admitted I was finding useful information and should go. I really hoped we were nearing the end. I felt fragile and close to breaking down, and I thought Jim felt that way too. That scared me. In my mind, Jim was always so strong, even when he felt distant. When I was away from him, he seemed steady and unshakable. My husband, Jim. That was then. But now let's look at Jim's side. After Cathy left that Saturday afternoon, I tried to go over all the messages and possible alerts from the communications coming out of Tehran. But I couldn't focus. Cathy kept coming back to my mind. What was I going to do about her? Was I being fair like Jennifer once asked me to be? Did I really have a good reason to treat her the way I thought I should? Or was I just punishing her? Elaine and most others seemed to think it might be a good idea to use Cathy for our plan. We were used to putting our own needs before others. Sure, protecting the United States and its people was important, but every action has a cost. Every forced choice, every bit of dirty trick, even against those who might not be innocent, affects us all. We knew this, but it felt much clearer when it was someone we loved and cared about. I never thought my wife would be involved in something that could hurt America or take a toll on me. It felt like it could destroy my marriage and shake my trust in women. I had believed in her so much that I thought our relationship would run smoothly. It turns out I was wrong. Is everyone now a suspect? You can't trick an honest person. You can't threaten someone innocent. But the truth is, human nature is complicated. None of us stay truly innocent for long. In religious terms, we all have our flaws. Morally, we all make mistakes. And socially, we face tough choices that don't always have clear answers. Many stories from different cultures show supernatural beings who use this sad truth. They use sweet words and lies to get what they want from people. In this line of work, people become skilled at manipulation. Is it really that hard? Many men and women become quite good at it, even if they start as amateurs. There's greed, desire, and pride. There's also fear and doubt. We're tempted by promises of money, power, love, or just thrilling experiences. All these things can be twisted and used to control others. Back in school, we read the screw tape letters by C.S. Lewis as if it were funny, but it had serious points about real life. It goes hand in hand with Games People Play by Eric Berne and The Lucifer Principle by Howard Blum. That's the basics. All the basics we need are actually in the Bible, but it can be tough to understand its main ideas about what Berne called human interaction. I never thought my wife, who is so smart and knows so much about our ancient beliefs, would struggle like this. It really shook my deep beliefs and made me rethink a lot about myself. Now I question every choice I make. It's a tough thing to deal with, especially when judging others. I always thought I could handle a little bad stuff without turning into a bad person myself. Cathy helped me see that this way of thinking was wrong. It was in this mood when Jennifer showed up to get me. "Dr. Ruth is free now, and you're next," she said. I knew it was a command, but I wasn't ready to talk to her just yet. "I'll see her in the morning before I face Cathy. How are you, Jen? Want to grab a drink?" "I'd rather just talk," she said. "Maybe we can go to your place instead? I'm kind of without a home right now and can't go back to my old place. People know what happened. I don't have another place yet." So we took a cab to my apartment that I decided to keep for now. The ride was quiet. Once we got settled with some drinks and ordered pizza, we shared a look and then both laughed a little. "At least we're still alive," Jennifer said. "I guess that's a victory for now." I nodded, but it didn't feel like we were winning much to me. "We could always just get rid of Kenneth," she joked. "But I want to do more than just that. We need to stop the whole Iranian nuclear weapons program. If we just take him out, they'll find someone else to step in. Who knows what secrets he might leave behind if he goes. But I wanted to focus on her." "How are you, really?" I asked. Jennifer looked at me seriously. "You don't really get it, do you? You're a good man, and I care about you. But you'll never really understand what it's like to be a woman. We have so much to deal with. Men often drive us to that point. I had to let Kenneth control things for the last week. If you want to know what it feels like, try being at the mercy of someone for a while," she suggested. I was taken aback. This wasn't what I expected to talk about. But maybe when all this is over, I'd think about it. "Then we can talk," I said. She smiled. "No, you don't have to do that. I wouldn't want that for you anyway. It wouldn't be the same. It might break you. Being a woman is just part of life for us. It's really just how nature works, and sometimes it feels like a bad joke. We are the only ones who can become pregnant. Mother Nature doesn't care if that happens through love, desire, or even through harsh means. In every situation, bringing a baby into the world is filled with difficulty and pain for women. The level of pain can range from very serious to life-threatening, but that doesn't change the fact. It doesn't matter if love or something else caused the pregnancy. Plus, most men are usually larger and stronger than most women, showing how little Mother Nature takes this into account. It's almost ironic, really, and the modern feminists often add to the humor of it all. The best things that have come for women are simple ideas. Religions like Judaism and Christianity teach about love, respect, and caring for women who often face struggles. So now, is it fair to criticize Cathy just because you're hurt? What about the teachings you claim to follow? Poor Cathy didn't pass some test. Did she leave you with a tough situation? But wait, Mother Nature sees to it that doesn't happen. Now, how do you feel about all of this? What are your plans moving forward? She was starting to make me think deeply, which caught me off guard. I thought Jen and I were just close friends. I suggested we have another drink before I replied. I needed time to think. I knew we would have to talk things through that night. So we both enjoyed a few drinks, ate plenty of pizza and snacks, and I finally let myself feel a bit sad and let my feelings out. Still, my heart wasn't really into it, and Jen picked up on that. She seemed satisfied with that. She didn't shout at me anymore, just talked about kindness, forgiveness, and a lesson about how often a father should forgive a son who returns home. Shouldn't that idea fit for a husband too? Eventually, we ended up resting together, almost fully clothed, like on a long flight home. I held her close as she stirred in her sleep. I wasn't the brightest guy, but I could still see the beauty in having so many caring women in the world. Even though none are perfect, just like men, I realized I hadn't been completely honest to Cathy either. Yet, every woman holds something special that no man can ever have. Maybe it was time to show some understanding. I still had strong feelings for my wife, both good and bad. I wanted to do the right thing, but I could tell it was going to be tough and already felt out of my control. The next morning, we both woke up complaining about our headaches. We shared the bathroom while getting ready. We didn't quite take our showers together, but we felt comfortable around each other. When I looked at her, I couldn't help but think how beautiful she was. But I also saw a dark bruise on her arm. It probably came from either Colonel Mandy or Kenneth. It made me really angry and want to get back at both of them for being so cruel. As we took some aspirin and drank our Bloody Marys, then coffee, I thanked Jennifer for last night and asked what her plans were for today. She said she was heading back to the office to keep working on her reports. I was on light duty for the next week. It was a requirement. Dr. Ruth even told me not to go back into the field undercover for at least 2 months. That's the plan for now, but I knew something would likely change. I asked her, "How about you? Feeling any better?" She said, "I'll be fine. Thanks for pushing me last night. I guess I needed it." I felt confused. I thought I had everything figured out, especially the important things. I still felt angry at my wife because she hurt me, but I didn't want to hurt her by sending her back to that awful Kenneth as punishment. But that's what I might have to do. This job was tough. Being a soldier in a war is never easy, and that's what we are in, a war. What we do could potentially save lives, maybe even thousands. Is that worth it? At least we are volunteers. We can quit whenever we want. You could walk away right now and take Cathy with you. Elaine would be upset and disappointed, but she would support you and keep you and Cathy safe as long as you stayed quiet and kept to yourself. But if you left, you might never get another chance with any U.S. intelligence agency. Think it through. Have you seen Dr. Ruth today? Yes, let's grab some breakfast on our way to the office. It was time to gather my strength and keep going. That was the mindset. Jennifer smirked in response. Yes, we were both being sarcastic. Dr. Ruth did her best to calm me down and bring my thoughts back together. She was like a mix of Yoda, a Zen master, and a wise grandmother. She mainly worked her magic by just letting me talk. With a few guiding questions, she reminded me to bring Cathy to see her tomorrow for some basic training of her own. I promised I would. And then it was time to face what felt like my greatest challenge, a beautiful woman who owned my heart, even after she had hurt it. And she gave it back to me, marked but still holding on. I finally made it home around 2 p.m. It felt small, but I stopped for a quick lunch before going to Cathy's condo. I wasn't quite ready to share a meal with her yet. I had to admit she didn't look great, and that made me feel a little better. Actually, she looked a lot like I did. It seemed like we had both been up late, drinking and crying the night before. I had just unlocked the front door and walked in with my suitcase when I saw her standing right in front of me. She looked like she wanted to embrace me but couldn't move. I just stared at her. Even looking rough, she was still beautiful. "Hi, Jim. Welcome home," she said seriously. "Home? I don't see this as home anymore, Cathy. I'm just here because I have to work," I replied. "I remember. Can I say something, Jim? Before we start working? I need to share before we dive into things." I thought about it but decided to let her talk. I had a feeling I knew what was coming. "I'm sorry. Blah, blah, blah." "Go ahead, I'm listening," I said. Cathy took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot lately, especially after yesterday. It shocked me in many ways. Some of the things I said yesterday, that was just my lawyer side trying to defend myself and shift blame. I did something terrible. I cheated on you. Nothing you did or didn't do makes what I did okay. It's not an excuse. I know my actions came from my own guilt. You have your burdens too, just like I do." She paused, looking serious. "So, let me ask you, were you unfaithful in our marriage? You promised to be honest yesterday. Did you ever cheat on me?" I felt uneasy, as I didn't want to lose the little bit of pride I had left. "Okay, I did sleep with Jennifer last night, but we were both drunk and dressed. Nothing happened. Nothing else." She looked hurt. "You chose to be with another woman when you could have been with me. I need you to hold me again." She sniffed a little. I wondered if I had avoided the worst of it with my half-truth. Lying can be effective if you stick to partial truths. But Cathy was a lawyer and had a knack for spotting lies. "Is that really all? I want the complete truth. Did you ever sleep with anyone else while we were married?" I sighed. "I'm not some kind of spy. That's not me. I don't win by chasing after women. I've had to be with a few others during work, but it was always overseas. What happens there stays there." They had only ever been short-term relationships, mostly just quick flings for me, no deeper feelings involved. I wasn't searching for someone to have an affair with while being married. That would be you, right? I'll talk about my own issues in a moment. I'll be honest with you then, as much as I understand myself right now. But let's focus on you first. So, you're not happy with your few brief encounters? You couldn't connect with them as well as you wanted. It was all very uninteresting or upsetting for you, and you never went back to Jennifer after that summer romance she mentioned. There was a long silence. Yes, every time I was with someone, I made sure they felt good. And yes, I did spend time with Jennifer again right before we went to Iran, after you and I had separated. Do you love her, Jim? Is she who you want to be with now? If she was, she would be the one I would be with every night, no matter what anyone else thought. Cathy seemed to be holding her breath until I answered. Then she took a deep breath. "What do you want, Jim?" I wasn't sure. "What do you want, Cathy?" She replied quickly. "I want to be your wife. I want our marriage to work. I want you in my bed every night. That is possible, but I don't want our marriage to go back to how it was. I don't want any more big lies between us. I want both of us to return to our faith and attend services together like we used to. I want to be close to my family back in Chicago again with your support. I want to have kids with you, maybe after you retire from your risky job or maybe even sooner. You would be a great dad, wouldn't you?" "I believe so. I don't want or need anyone else in my life, and I don't want you with anyone else either. But I will trust you to do what you need to with your important job. I won't bother you about it. I trust you to always make the right choices. That's pretty much what I want, in short. Now, what can I do to make that happen? Please, Jim, you've thought about this a bit. I think I want the same things you do, dear. I just don't know how or if we can get there. Right now, though, our happiness isn't the biggest concern because of everything going on around us. I feel like I'm in a movie, trying to explain how everything feels so serious right now. We need to work hard to avoid a major conflict because even one small incident could lead to something bigger, resulting in many lives lost. Why did you have to be with Kenneth? Sigh. It's my turn now. I guess I didn't have to mess around with Kenneth, but I chose to do just that. I thought I was all grown up like a mature woman. Instead, I felt like a schoolgirl, wishing for some amazing man to want me just like Xerxes wanted Esther. Then I thought, like Esther, I could do great things with the help of a powerful man like that king once was in his world. But I messed it all up. Kenneth is not a Xerxes, and he never will be. And I'm not Esther. You know that better than I do right now. And I definitely didn't do it because you didn't meet my needs when I was with both you and Kenneth. I never wanted to let you go. I only turned away from you a few times, and that was late at night to be with Kenneth. Those times happened because of social events we were at before I went off with him. I admit that being with Kenneth at first was exciting and new. It felt different and thrilling in its own way. Plus, Kenneth was still very mysterious. I wondered what he might want from me. Would I be good enough for him so he'd choose me over all the other women he could have? Maybe you can imagine the excitement I felt from being involved with all of this, thinking I could manage to keep things going with you. It seemed easy and without too much trouble. Even when you left, it felt lucky, and I didn't worry about it much at first. I felt in control of my own life. Ironically, that night when you moved out was when Kenneth brought another woman home. I accepted it. At that moment, my romantic dreams faded, along with the fun and excitement I once felt. My sense of control started to slip away, too. I hardly ever spent all night with Kenneth before. Just a few times when you were out of town, and I could be with him whenever he wanted. But now, he didn't want to do that at all. We never really slept together. Our time together became more wild, but often included another woman. Then I was always sent home. My bed felt emptier, and I missed you more and more. I didn't know what to do about it. I felt stuck, filled with guilt, shame, and confusion. My relationship with Kenneth was closely connected to my job. I really needed that job, especially if you found out what was happening and decided to divorce me because of my cheating. When Kenneth went out of town to Iran for a week, I felt relieved. I wanted to make sure you would spend a couple of nights with me during that time. I hoped to bring you back completely and then break free from my messy relationship with Kenneth. But then, you went away too. I just wanted to forget all about Kenneth. I was naive to think I could keep it hidden forever. Cheating usually comes to light eventually. People talk, and sometimes your partner happens to be someone who knows a lot more than they let on. So what now? Are you really going to force me back to Kenneth as if I am just someone he controls? Can you take this burden away from me? I whispered, tears building up. Cathy looked at me with care and sadness and softly said, "Let it happen however it is meant to be." My heart felt even heavier at those words. "Don't say that," I replied. "I'm just a person who's fallen and broken like you. I don't want to go back to Kenneth. It isn't something I choose. It's just work that needs to be done. We have to figure this out together. I can't handle the idea of living with you mad at me for what I must do. You'll at least have to stay close to me, holding me while I'm here. Please just pretend you still care a little for me. Even if we're acting, we don't have to take it anywhere it doesn't need to go. But I would love it if you could even act that way a bit. You're strong. You can do this, right? If you could handle this for a stranger, can't you do it for someone you know? I can give it a shot." So, our unusual new relationship began. I would hold her at night, but try not to cross any lines until her relationship with Kenneth was really over. I made an effort to treat her as a partner in this difficult situation. This was not easy. I often found myself feeling physical reactions that made things complicated. I woke up each morning with those feelings which felt like a betrayal from my own body. She was still very beautiful and confident. She never tried to cover up around me, just like before. Apparently, she felt great in her skin, and she wore stunning new outfits all the time, especially on weekends. She wanted kisses and affection at night, and it felt like she was really testing me. I eventually decided that she spent a few hours with Dr. Ruth on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. After that, she finally called Kenneth. We had all talked about it in a professional way. After each meeting with Dr. Ruth, she seemed more relaxed and confident. Earlier, after her first night back with Kenneth and Elaine, she lost some of that confidence. When she came home around 2 a.m. the next morning, she was very nervous. She quietly went into the bathroom and took a long shower. She changed out of the clothes she had worn and put on one of my t-shirts and some loose sweatpants before coming to bed. She looked so worn out that I felt sorry for her and just held her. It became part of our new routine. She cried softly until she finally fell asleep. I wondered what was happening to her, to us, and to me. Was this worth it? I wouldn't have an answer until it was all over, and maybe I would never know. The next morning, she didn't look me in the eyes and didn't talk to me. This was a big problem because I needed a report after her contact with Kenneth. That was why I was tasked with helping her. I decided to get her to Dr. Ruth as soon as I could. She talked with Ruth for about 30 minutes, then called me in. Cathy calmly shared what had happened the night before, staying very professional. She mentioned how Kenneth was feeling and any important details from their meeting. However, she didn't go into who did what or any details that made her uncomfortable. That was what Cathy was scared of telling me. Dr. Ruth helped her understand her own mixed-up feelings about everything. As we were leaving, Ruth smiled at me and said, "She's doing really well for someone new at this." Jim and I nodded and agreed. I felt like I was struggling as an experienced pro. I needed to pull myself together and focus so we could get through this successfully. When Cathy was invited to go with Kenneth to California and then Paris, she didn't seem excited at all. This showed that Cathy was doing well in her job. However, she cared more about being with me now. I helped her manage everything, and we set up phone rules, how often we would call, and made the calls feel random. We even created some special code words, including a panic code for really serious situations. I didn't mention it to her, but when she went to California, I went too. I wanted to be close to both Kenneth and Cathy, and also to have a face-to-face meeting with Farah Turner to talk about her 2 kids. I set up a chance meeting during one of her scheduled lunches. She greeted me with a hug while Andre's assistant and I tried to be casual, keeping things low-key until her bodyguard seemed to lose focus. I then shared what we had discovered about her children in Iran. Her daughter was missing, but it seemed she had just run away to be with a young love. We were still working to find both kids and get them out of Iran. I warned her that her son might be very hard to rescue, if not completely lost to her at this point. Despite years of intense influence, we would still do everything we could. I also told her it was time to part ways with Kenneth and to start that process legally. It was important to protect her money, but I advised her to wait a little while to see if Kenneth approached her asking for a big payout. I needed to know who that money was meant for. I mentioned that a distant cousin, a quiet and nerdy young man, would need to stay with her for a couple of weeks. He was actually one of our best agents, skilled in protection, and could be very effective because he seemed harmless. He was meant to shield her from her other bodyguards until she could separate from Kenneth and remove those unwanted people from her life for good. I felt hopeful. We could be just weeks away from freeing her from Kenneth, but predicting the future is tricky with many uncertainties. At that moment, Cathy reported to me about SNL, which could mean Sandia National Laboratory. They had developed a new solid-state component, a small and advanced replacement for a neutron pulse tube, like a mini particle accelerator. This new tech allowed for smaller and more efficient nuclear devices. The smaller the warhead, the smaller the missile could be, effective from short distances to intercontinental ranges. So it was possible that Kenneth had some of these advanced switches and new triggers on his plane. We had to make sure they did not reach Iran no matter what. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.